Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight as we kick off a brand new week here on the mighty SOR. Thank you for joining us. My name is Dave Scott. And yes, we got a great show talking to UFOs, whistleblowers, pilots, and experiencers. The ExoAcademian is here, Darren King. We're going to get into it very, very soon, and I'm so excited to have him on the show tonight. Dirty Filth is here with another great cartoon for your liking, and the best part, all of you are here as well. And let's say hello to all of you. Let's start off with, I believe it is Ann B in the gold medal position. Sugar Britches with the silver. Race Fan taking home a bronze medal tonight. Hi, Kurt M. Mojalis, how are you? I'm probably pronounced that wrong. I apologize. Welcome to SOR Chat. Robert Lamoth, Roy Boy, Zed Hutt, Lars Janssen, who's wearing Peter Forsberg's old number 21 while playing left wing from Stockholm, Sweden. Mr. Cowley, welcome back to the show. Oh, Mr. Cowley loves his Spaced Out Radio. And Mr. Cowley will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the right of the studio, if you don't mind, to the right of the studio. Laura Lobbs, Cosmic Floor, Brown Dwarf, Area 51, and Stephanie Kenny Blankenship. How are you? Sweet Donna Spencer. How you doing, beautiful? Sweet Donna is going to be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the left of the studio, if you don't mind, to the left of the studio. Luscious Jules, how are you? Chillgasm, Raymond L., nice to see you. Gizmo and Mr. Music. Mr. Music's been a while since we had you here. Good to see you back. Jenny White Bear, we love you, my dear. How you doing? Ozzy Sue, Rob G., good to see you both. Paramarv, what's happening? Millennium, my man, thank you for coming on in as we continue on with our roll call tonight. Pixie Lara, good to see you. Dave Walters from Kamloops, nice to have you here. Be the Arrow, Esmeralda, Nick Atkins, and Skip to Malou, how are you? And thank you for joining us. D. Cohen, Christine Lynn, and Mike, thank you for coming on in. JSCO, how are you, my friend? Good to see you. Little Kilroy, Aunt Edna, nice to have you here. Raymond Al, Chad Palmer, what's happening? Yeah, good to have you back, Chad. Thank you. Les Paul Holland, strum it up for us if you don't mind. Brad Roenfeld, Bobby Farron, Hilton, nice to have you all here. Hi, Eric Austin. Thank you for coming on in. Chrono Trigger, welcome to SOR Chat. And Tim Mothman and Monica, thank you for joining us as we continue on with a roll call. Star Nebula, welcome to SOR Chat. And James Fry, 13th, welcome to SOR Chat as well as we continue on with our roll call tonight. Susan Alloway, Digger Dog, good to see you both. Pissing me off, Evan Walters, and I like it. Anilka, nice to see you. And Thomas Rock, thank you for coming on in. Mac Geek, always a pleasure. Aaron Bacca, how are you, my friend? As we are caught up in roll call. Let's get the radio side going. So that way we can get Bill WD40 into the chat room tonight so he can lube us up for tonight's show, because you always want to go into a chat nice and smooth. You know what I'm saying? All right. Let's see here. Don't forget, Super Chat is open. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis as well. You can hit subscribe, ring that bell if you're new here. We'd really appreciate it, as it helps with our algorithms, along with giving us a thumbs up thumbs down, thumbs sideways. You can do some shopping at our website, spacedoutradio.com. We got cool swag. I'm not going to lie. We got cool swag there, and you're definitely going to want to show it on off. And it's pretty cheap, too. I will say that. I go shopping there more than any place else, but that's just me. That's just me. I'm biased. Peppa H, how you doing? There's Bill WD40 in the Spreaker chat. Looking good, Bill. Lube it up in there if you don't mind. Let's make sure that everything runs smoothly. We'd appreciate that. And once again, our guest tonight, Darren, the ExoAcademian King, is our guest. We're getting into serious UFOs tonight. We're going to have a great chat with him. I know you're going to enjoy it. I'm going to enjoy it too. Do me a favor, everyone. Horns up. Let's rock. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show and on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. Major information coming your way in the UFO world. Tonight, the ExoAcademian Darren King talks about UFOs, the pilots, and the experiencers. Then in hour number 3, we got a great story coming from Steve Stockton from Among the Missing. Tim Senor has a UFO report, and that will round out tonight's show. Darren King, also known by the handle ExoAcademian, is a researcher and podcaster who brings a multidisciplinary approach to the study of the UFO phenomena and general paranormality, recognizing that what we are really dealing with is an overarching topic involving the interrelated and overlapping elements of UFO sightings, interactions with apparently non-human and or non-conventionally human intelligence, out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, and psi phenomena such as telepathy, telekinesis, and precognition. Darren is keyed in on the big questions that arise from this field of study. Who are we? Who are these various others? And what is the ultimate nature of reality? Darren has also been on top of what's happening in the news today about everything UFO. And that's why I'm very excited to have him on the show for all of you to listen to tonight. The ExoAcademian, Darren King. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio for the first time, my friend. How you doing?
Dave, I'm doing great. Happy to join you. Been looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too, my man. You know, I've been following you for about 4 or 5 years now, man. I can't believe this is the first time we got you on. So when I saw you online the other day, I was like, damn it, it's time. I hope he says yes. It is time to get Darren on. And you're like, hell yeah, let's do this thing. So we're going to do it tonight, my man. We're going to do it tonight. How did you get involved with UFOs? What made you garner this interest?
That's always the $10 million question, right? I think initially it was Whitley Strieber's books that got me into it. Just really fascinated by his original books, you know, Communion, Transformation, Breakthrough, The Secret School, all those ones. And then had some anomalous experiences of my own much later than that, probably, 10 years after that. And that kind of made me wonder about what was going on. And then as I got back into it, the anomalous experience I had kind of made sense once I looked into some of the other sort of paranormal aspects, the high strangeness associated so much with these encounters or with these sightings. And that really made me wonder about what's going on about reality altogether. Because as I said, or as you introduced me there with the introduction, I think all this is connected. psi phenomena, near-death experience, out-of-body experience, altered state experiences, the way that people that encounter the beings often feel like they go into alternate realms, that kind of thing. So really how that all wraps up together, which, is partly why I called my podcast Point of Convergence, is really the most interesting question for me, what I've been fascinated by for years now.
The fact that this phenomena is, I think, like you, it's all interconnected somehow. Doesn't matter whether it's out of body experiences, UFOs, aliens, Bigfoot, crop circles, ghosts. I really do believe that it's safe to say now that it is all interconnected one way or another. We just haven't figured out the paths that connect everything just yet. You have been on one of the front lines, especially on Twitter, regarding the studies of UFOs and especially the major news that has been going on throughout the years. We've seen so much change in the government game plan and starting with the To the Stars Academy and then moving forward to what we're seeing today. Did you ever think that this little topic of UFOs would gain such political attention?
It's a great question. And I think people who've been in it for decades kind of convinced themselves that it was never going to happen because they just saw so little traction for so long. And even when things seem to be kicking into high gear, they seem to just get swallowed up again. The secrecy just seemed to kick into high gear and it never really gained the traction we were hoping for. 2017 was sort of the beginning with that groundbreaking article in the New York Times. And ever since then, I think we've seen a ramp up. But I think even I've been surprised by how much it's increased of the last year or so. I kind of had a sense of the things that were coming down the pipe in terms of the Grush revelations and whatnot. And I think because he's such a credible witness and because of the things he's saying are so difficult to refute, and his background, his professional background is just without question, really. I think finally that combined with the fact that we live in a social media world now where you can't put these things back in a box like used to be the case with the secret keeping in decades previous, has got us to where we are now. And yeah, I'm even surprised by how much it's gained traction. That said, when you look at the actual mainstream media coverage, it's still not what we would like to see. We're seeing secondary papers and outlets pick it up. We're seeing political figures definitely taking this seriously, but still relative silence amongst the mainstream media, which I'm waiting to see that gain traction as well.
See, as a former member of the mainstream media, it drives me nuts. It really does. I mean, I remember going to broadcasting school and journalism school, and if this was any other story, it would be all over the world, and it would be lighting up every news wire going on. But because it is what it is, it's sad that journalism today isn't taking advantage of this incredible story. We could debate that for hours upon end, but I mean, at least it's getting coverage. I guess that's the way we can look at it. And, it may not be the people we want covering it or covering it the way we want it to be covered, but at least we're getting somewhere. It's better than being laughed at, which we were prior to 2017.
Absolutely agreed. No doubt. I mean, when you hear the language that's even being used in the legislation that's being drafted, it's remarkable. You're hearing off-world vehicles and things like that talked about. You're hearing different hypotheses speaking to the ontology of these beings being bantied about by politicians in official addresses, by interviews by the media and whatnot, which again is shocking. We went from a couple of years ago, everything getting swallowed up into it could just be Chinese or Russian drones. And that kind of drove me a little crazy, how that became the catch-all, just like swamp gas was in previous decades. But we're not hearing that now. We're hearing definitive statements made about technology that is not of this world, at least not of conventional human creation, and that we don't just talk about objects in the sky, lights in the sky, but these are recovered technological craft that are now allegedly in the possession of the US government and other governments around the world. So this is really groundbreaking stuff.
When you decided to start looking into this a lot more seriously and creating the Point of Convergence podcast, which we recommend our listeners to go hit subscribe to, you've come at this from, I think, a real educational, newsworthy background. You have brought this to a level that is more mature than what we are seeing on so many different levels when it comes to podcasts, radio shows, YouTube channels. Why did you go that route rather than the sensationalism of what we see a lot of people do?
Well, I think initially my intention was I would start up a podcast for my own curiosity, asking the questions that were important to me, not really thinking that I would get more than 5 or 10 listeners. So it kind of took off and gained traction, I think, because there's a lot of people who have the same curiosity I have that don't want just to see the clickbait, whatever is the most sensational headline, but actually want to dive into all the nuances, all the nooks and crannies of this, because there's so much to explore. Even if you sort of address each of the main hypotheses within the first year, then the second year you can dive into more nuance and granularity around each of those hypotheses and how they might overlap, and how that even speaks to how sure we are about our understanding of the nature of reality. So basically, I just began with my own curiosity and went with that, and it seemed to gain traction as other people had the same questions.
You've done a number of shows on this topic. I've done hundreds of shows on this topic. What questions are we missing? What questions are we not asking to try and move the ball forward?
Well, I think the big one is what I just referred to, is the nature of reality. Because as you and I just began the show talking about all these different phenomena that are often not talked about in the same kind of conversation, near-death experience, out-of-body experience, psi phenomena, ghosts, apparitions. You think about Whitley Strieber seeing deceased relatives, or guests at his cabin seeing deceased relatives on one floor of the cabin, while on the above floor, he and his wife are seeing gray aliens. This is happening at the same time. This is clearly saying something. Now, some people would like to say, well, this is just the gray aliens fooling us and manifesting, masking as human beings that the people knew downstairs. I don't think it's that simple. I think somehow even the veil between life and death is also bridged by this phenomena. So I think these are questions we need to ask, is what is this saying about reality? Rather than trying to fit all of this diverse phenomena, anomalous phenomena, within the suitcase that already exists, when clearly it doesn't fit very well, when you have that much data hanging out, when you have the clothes hanging outside the suitcase, not wanting to fit in, no matter how much you try to cram it shut, that suggests from a scientific perspective that perhaps we're missing something significant in our model of reality. And I think that's where we need to look.
Looking aside, there's a lot of criticism that is going on. UFO Twitter has become a cesspool of arguments rather than the information that it was trading right at the beginning. We've seen a lot of people take sides, on who's telling the truth, who isn't. And anybody who's new looking into this subject, if they look into UFO Twitter, it really is, a real, I don't even know how to put it without saying it, extremely impolite and potentially swearing on that. How do we find that information, those golden nuggets now, when everything seems to be about teams? Everybody seems to, if you're not on the right side of the UFO Twitter conversation, you're a horrible name. You're a horrible adjective, from everything from racist to stupid to an idiot to every other adjective that we could come through there. I mean, what's your thoughts on that right now? Because UFO Twitter used to be such a great bastion of information.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think there have become factions that have emerged. I think that that's challenging for someone who's new to the topic, because depending on who they might come across initially, they're going to be led down one avenue or another in terms of what this is all about. Even when you think about David Grush, there are some people who are convinced that he's as credible as they come, and that he's here to finally bring to the mainstream these revelations that have been kind of kicking around in the back rooms of ufology for a long time. But there are other people that are convinced this is all part of a massive psyop, and he's the ultimate psyop of psyops, and that the ultimate goal is to either discredit ufology or to set up some sort of threat narrative so that the government can continue to arm to the teeth with spending on military budgets. I think if I were someone new to the topic, or if I were to recommend something to people new to the topic, it's take your time. Don't assume the first thing you come across is the bastion of truth. I think you shouldn't take anything as gospel truth. You should look around, recognize that people's backgrounds, people's personalities, people's biases really play into how they think about this topic, because science has kind of ignored it for so long. There kind of isn't this rigorous peer review kind of notion around different hypotheses that are put forward. So what you tend to see is people putting forward whatever they prefer, whatever they like to believe about reality or about the phenomenon in terms of the ontology of the beings, in terms of whether or not the beings are good or not, all those kind of things. So I think I'd recommend to people, take your time, look around, notice how different people's personalities and their biases come through in what they're saying about their opinions about this. And remember that these are opinions. There's so much we don't know that we don't know here. And in terms of UFO Twitter, I just hope that people would recognize that there's going to be a lot of new people coming into the field because these revelations are hitting the mainstream. We're having people come in probably by the thousands weekly now that have not really been familiar with this topic. So the more we can be welcoming and even prepare people for the ontological shock that's coming or that's already hitting, I think we do a public service by preparing that way.
What do you think the public needs most education in right now regarding this subject? Is it learning that this phenomena is real? Is it learning that this is going to change humanity for a lifetime? Is it something different?
Well, this is what I say about this topic, is that it's the one topic that leaves no other topic unscathed. Because when you think about these beings, it's not just that they arrived last Tuesday or even in 1947. If you want to go back to the modern UFO era, they seem to, you could argue, have been here all along, perhaps even since the dawn of our species, perhaps beforehand, perhaps even playing a hand either in the arriving of our civilization, the seeding of our civilization, or at least of the tweaking of our genome and things like that as we moved along, perhaps even sociological tweaking a la Jacques Vallée's control system hypothesis. So when you think about all of that, that's a lot to get into. So it's not like one person can come in and say, well, isn't this just about space aliens coming from Alpha Centauri? That's fairly simple, right? We already believe, most people believe, scientists believe, that with the size of the cosmos, it's likely that life is teeming throughout the cosmos, even if we haven't found much of it yet. The challenge is, as Vallée and Hynek and people like that and Keel talked about, the data seems to point to something much more complex than just space aliens. And again, I want to point out that space aliens is the convenient fit for our current model of reality. That's sort of the final frontier that we haven't looked at yet, is space. So when we see these beings that don't fit any of our zoological perspectives on what should exist, then we assume they must be coming from the one frontier we haven't fully explored yet, which is space. But again, the challenge with that is that we don't know what we don't know. We don't understand how little we understand about the nature of space-time. As I've been talking about a lot, there's all sorts of evidence, even within cutting-edge physics now, that space-time is derivative of some deeper structure. And you could argue that these beings are operating and knowledgeable at those deeper structures, which is partly why they can run circles around us psychologically, sociologically. They can blip in and blip out. All the things that the skeptics point to in terms of why isn't there more evidence? Why is it always blurry? Well, because they're so sophisticated and they run circles around our perception of reality in such a way that they can be seen or not seen, interact or not interact whenever they feel like it. So that's a lot for people to get into who are new to the topic.
Oh, very true. Very true. It is a difficult topic to get into because there's not just one book that could go out there. Like you mentioned Whitley Strieber a couple of times. Communion is the only book I've never finished. It's still sitting in a box because I got freaked out. I was a brand new father in 1999. I think my daughter woke up. She was about 4 months old, and I was reading the book and cuddling her at the same time. And then do you remember the part in the book where Whitley is on the craft and he looks to his side and his young son is right beside him?
Yeah.
I literally put my bookmark back in the book and I threw the book across the room. I got so scared at that point with that. And I've never opened up communion again with it. We got 4 minutes to go before we got to go to break at the bottom of the hour. Darren King, the ExoAcademian, is here from the podcast Point of Convergence. And Darren, we're going to talk whistleblowers in the next half hour because this is kind of the next phase that we are seeing when it comes to the push towards what I call confirmation. Many people call disclosure. I want to ask you before we get to the whistleblowers, is disclosure possible?
I'm glad you asked that question with an if, because that is a great question. I don't think it's as simple as people think it is, because it's not just about what truth exists. It's not even about what truth you can expose, but it's about how much truth the gatekeepers will let through. And I don't just mean gatekeepers of mainstream media or political structures, but even people's minds, our sociological perspectives. How much can we really go through enough cognitive dissonance to come out the other side with an understanding of this? Because disclosure, again, in my perspective, speaks to the nature of reality altogether, not just about the fact that UFOs are real and there's non-human sophisticated intelligence in our midst. So I think disclosure will be a process, and I think it'll be rolling out for all of our lifetimes and probably beyond.
I'm in the same way as you, but I add to it this. I think right now there are a number of lawyers of all the alphabet agencies going through this because there's a lot of secrets that if they came out, there's going to be a lot of people in trouble over the decades. And I think they are trying to play this as so close to the chest as possible to get out of this as scot-free as possible by playing the stupid card like we see NASA doing. Okay. I mean, I can't believe nobody's outside of us here. I can't believe very few have jumped on the NASA bandwagon about how idiotic they look through this entire process. But that's neither here or there for this conversation, but I really do believe that there are numerous lawyers and historians looking through the files and saying, look, we can't let this go on Roswell, or we can't let this go on Kecksburg or Phoenix or wherever, because we're going to get ourselves in a lot of hot water here. Do you see that as an action plan?
I think that there's a few things going on that I've sort of been aware of, and some of it I'm speculating, and some I'm doing more than speculating. And that is, and this was even mentioned by David Grush in his testimony when he was speaking with Ross Coulthart. There are tens, even hundreds of people, even on the inside, who recognize this needs to get out, that just declaring it a national security risk is not sufficient to hide this main revelation from all of humanity, which is our birthright to know that we are not alone, that our reality is much more complex than we've been told. Not to mention, of course, the other revelations that come along with this provide opportunities for us to transform civilization and deal with some of the challenges we're going through. So I think that's why even there are some good people on the inside who want to get this out. But sure enough, like you say, there are plenty of people that are the historic gatekeepers or have inherited that legacy of gatekeeping. And they are either doing their darndest to stop it, although I think many of them are recognizing that is a lost battle at this point. There's just too much that's already been disclosed. Now it's just a matter of things kind of coming to their fruition. And I think, yes, they are thinking about what does this mean even in terms of liability, right? If this gets exposed, then what kind of, in terms of, for instance, like abductees, right? If there is truth to the notion that to some degree the government of the world, the US government specifically, knew about it, perhaps even agreed to it in some level. This is part of the accusations, the allegations, right? If that's true, then the legality issues are massive. And not to mention what that does to the social trust, which is already so weak when people find out, citizens find out that their own governments have made these kind of accords without them being aware. So much to go through in terms of what the lawyers and the secret keepers are working through right now.
Well, on that note, when we come back from the break here at the bottom of the hour with Darren King, the ExoAcademian from the Point of Convergence podcast, we are going to get into whistleblowers, the importance of them. Where will they win? Where will they fail? David Grush, his testimony. How important is it really? There's a lot to cover in the next 90 minutes with the ExoAcademian right here on Spaced Out Radio, so you better stay tuned. We're about to light this up like a 4th of July firecracker right after this on Spaced Out Radio. One of the greatest nights of my life happened tonight about 12, what year is it, 2023? Yeah, about 11, 12 years ago. I've never seen anything like it, and I recommend everybody to do it at least once in your lifetime. We were flying to visit some friends in Pennsylvania, and it was July 3rd. We caught we flew from Vancouver to Toronto, and then caught a plane from Toronto to Pittsburgh. And the second we crossed Lake Ontario, we had the next 90 minutes of fireworks going off underneath us.
Wow.
And I have never ever been in a plane where there's fireworks around like that. I highly recommend, if you ever get a chance to fly on the 3rd of July or the 4th of July, to do it at least once in your life.
Wow.
Go
Yeah.
somewhere, because it was literally one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen in my life, is watching the fireworks from, like I said, the second we crossed Lake Ontario into New York, heading down to Pennsylvania. It was gorgeous, and it was nonstop. And you talk about, everybody talks about the wow factors in life. That is one of them.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds amazing. People are so used to seeing it from below, right? So seeing it from above is a totally different idea. Interesting.
Oh, and the fact that it doesn't matter where you look, it's everywhere.
Right. Yeah.
It's just absolutely everywhere. It's an absolute rush. So if you ever get a chance, go flying on a night like tonight.
All right. Will do. That's on the bucket list, as they say.
Oh, yeah. Any big plans for tomorrow for the big 4th?
Not really. I mean, I never really do anything that much. I'm kind of in the boonies here in Western North Carolina, so there really isn't any major fireworks planned or anything. So probably just lay low, relax. That's kind of the plan.
You got Sasquatch in the boonies there?
What's that?
You got some Sasquatch in the boonies there?
Well, people say so. I've never seen one, but people say this area is definitely known for it. In fact, everywhere you go hiking here, there's signs saying, Sasquatch country, and Bigfoot was here and things like that. So it's definitely part of the lore here. And people do talk about sightings, but I have not had one yet.
I got a guy who listens to this show, and he's been listening to me for 6 years. And he finally reached out to me a couple weeks ago with some photographs of a Sasquatch face and fingerprints on his vehicle windows.
Wow.
And we're going to try and head down there next weekend, because he lives about 2 hours south of me, an hour and a half south of me. And so we're going to try and get down there this coming weekend to go investigate. But he sent me a message on the weekend saying he was just talking to his neighbor about all the action that's happening around their properties. And the neighbor 2 weeks ago said, yeah, he goes, I just saw a mama and a baby walking through my backyard the other day. This was like 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm like pumped to get there. He's finding like 19-inch tracks on his property, and that just excites me.
Well, I mean, British Columbia, Cascadia in general, right, is kind of well known for Sasquatch sightings. Yeah.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. So I find it interesting. I find it a good way to spend a day. That's for sure. I don't mind chasing a little bit of Sasquatch in the middle of summer where there's rattlesnakes. Oh,
yeah. You got rattlesnakes where you are?
Down, not where I am, down where this guy is, there are.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like snakes. I scream like a young schoolgirl when I see a snake.
I hear you. I'm that way with spiders.
Yeah, so I'm excited, man. I'm excited. I don't know what I'll do if I come across a 19-inch print. I found 16-inch prints last year when we had our sighting about 100 yards away from us in the forest last year. So I'm really excited to see what a 19-inch print looks like. So
Yeah.
that's pretty big. 1 second, please. Thank you to Jeff and Enki for the super chats tonight. Very much appreciated. I know we got a bunch of new people tuned on in. Don't forget to hit subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and ring that bell. It really helps with our algorithms. Hi, Majdi. How you doing? Here we go, the second half hour. Second half hour, Spaced Out Radio is underway. We're going to get into some UFO whistleblowers in just a moment. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears. I want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag. Follow us on social media on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. From the Point of Convergence podcast, the man known as the ExoAcademian, Darren King, is here. And we're going to get seriously into the whistleblower angle of the UFOs because this seems to be the trend right now. Darren, as we bring you back in and say hello to you, the trend of government officials, ex-military, ex-spies, ex-spooks coming out and talking about UFOs and what they know. We all knew about Lou Elizondo. He was the first. But lately, we've learned a lot about David Grush, where over the last year and a half, behind the scenes, he's addressed other countries like Canada's government regarding this on a couple of occasions. He's been in silence attending UFO conferences, which I find a little bit odd, but hey, it is what it is. And now, right now, he is providing some of the greatest information that sci-fi writers could only dream of. What's your thoughts on David Grush and the whistleblower phenomena?
Well, it's remarkable, and it's only because of the whistleblowers that we are where we are. Because if you think about it, a lot of the revelations that Grush exposed in both the piece in the debrief by Leslie Kane and Ralph Blumenthal and in the interview with Ross Coulthart, he said a lot of things that we've heard in our circles, right? In ufology circles, this has been kicking around for decades, these different notions that he exposed. What's different is we have someone who's credible, highly credible, who has very high clearances, was briefing the Biden administration, that kind of thing, who's been repeatedly promoted in his career and apparently taking great personal risks to come out and talk about this, but because he seems like a person who really cares about what he does. And like Lou Elizondo, if he confronts or is confronted by a job, a position, a military that impedes the public from knowing what they have every right to know, and he doesn't see a way for it to happen through the usual channels, then people who are truly patriotic will do what's necessary to educate the public, to find a way to get this out to the public, because this is the kind of thing that you just cannot choose. No group of people can choose to hide this from the rest of humanity. This is something we all deserve to deal with. And frankly, we could do with this revelation in order to perhaps rethink how we do our civilization, like I was saying earlier. So I think, again, we are only where we are because of him. He wasn't able to, of course, bring forward photos, videos, actual documents, because that is still classified. This is part of the trickiness of this game, is that because the classification is so advanced, it's so sophisticated, it's so all-encompassing, it's very difficult to ever get anything out. Even when people talk about filing FOIA requests and whatnot, there's still plenty that's excluded from what can actually be included in that. So we're fooling of ourselves if we think we can just file a few FOIA requests and get disclosure. What he is able to do is not bring forward that classified information, but he can testify to what he was told by other credible witnesses. Now, I understand that skeptics are going to say, well, we're just hearing stories about one person talking about stories other people have told him. And there's some truth to that. But again, we have to look at the credibility of this individual. Very difficult to dismiss him based on his background. also recognizing that this is the best he can do. He cannot just hand over these documents, these classified materials. He may even think it would not be a good idea to do that in terms of national security. But again, plenty of this can come out. So he's testified to what he can to the public. And more importantly, for those who do have clearances, he's said a lot more. And so now people who do have clearances, people in congressional committees and whatnot that are going to look into this, have heard the allegations, have been convinced that these are credible and urgent allegations, and are now acting on it. Because of him, we are now hearing about hearings happening in the United States. And of course, this is also kicked over into other countries, like you mentioned, Canada. Larry Maguire's office has been very active because of this. So my understanding was a few months ago that each of the Five Eyes countries knew that something was coming in the summer of 2023, and were quickly getting into gear in terms of how they're going to handle this with each of their own population. So I know that there were MPs and whatnot in different countries around the world, Canada being one of them, that were determining what they could in terms of intel so they could brief the parliaments of whatever country they're part of, and then prepared to brief the populace, because they knew that this was going to be needed to be addressed because of what was going to happen in the United States.
Well, one of the things that, David Grush has, we've seen over the last week or so, 2 weeks especially, is we're seeing a lot of people trying to break this man down. Who is he? What's he all about? What did he have for breakfast last night? When's the last time he had a beer? What's the last book he wrote? Which is his favorite sports team? But it got ugly. People are looking for any flaw in him, and we saw people attacking him and his credibility regarding the fact that he suffers from autism, much what we believe is Asperger's, which is now classified under the autism spectrum by many. I mean, why would people dig that low? Like, if you don't want to believe him, that's fine. But questioning a person's medical history is a little different for what we do.
Well, I think there's two aspects I would address that. One is the general public or ufologists, and then there's the government angle. From the governmental side, we've unfortunately seen a long history of attempts to discredit and basically destroy the reputations of people, both politicians and people in the general public, when they dare to come forward with this. In the past, that was often all that it took. When, again, there was more control over the media, when it was more easy to perhaps even coordinate a mass public relations campaign amongst different newspapers around the world. If you could just pay off a few journalists around the world for major newspapers, they were on the payroll, for instance, of the intelligence community, then you could control things by releasing official reports through those kinds of news media, and then doing your darndest to discredit these people as much as you could. And really, unfortunately, there was no rung too low in terms of what they would attempt to do. They just decided that whatever it took, they were going to do it. And of course, there's been allegations about people even losing their lives because of this secret keeping historically. With David Grush, again, I just hats off to him in terms of his credibility, in terms of his stalwartness in coming forward, because he knew this was going to happen. Because it's not the nature of his revelations that they can question. That's the thing. Even since then, just today I mentioned on a tweet, Michael Schellenberger has done some great work as an independent journalist, finding other high-ranking officials corroborating what David Grush has said. So at this point, it's even beyond David Grush, because we're seeing other whistleblowers following his lead after he was the brave one who went first and corroborating it. So even if they do try to destroy David Grush right now, it's not going to stop this from continuing to roll down the hill. But unfortunately, yes, that's what they do. Government circles go after people's credibility. The fact that nothing major has come out in his background tells you that they tried and they could not find anything. Now, in terms of the second group, I'd say it's the skeptics, the cynics, who just want to shoot down anything that could point to this being an actual real thing. There being a there, as I like to say. And they too like to find anything they can do to discredit and call into question the credibility, the truthfulness, the veracity of the claims of the people coming forward. But again, the fact that nothing major has come out tells you that he is a credible witness. And again, since then, we've had many others come forward supporting his claims, some on the record, some off the record. But when you listen to journalists like Michael Schellenberger coming forward and saying he's done his own research and he's had people come forward and say what these allegations point to is true. And even Marco Rubio this last week gave comments saying he's heard from numerous highly ranked, highly cleared individuals with legacy careers in the military coming forward and saying this stuff is real. And he said in briefing the public, you have to ask yourself, what are the chances that this many people will be coming forward about a lie? It just doesn't make sense. Something is really there.
We have learned from numerous cases like Lou Elizondo, where we learned that the Pentagon was trying to erase his files and emails regarding his history with the ATIP program. And to me, that's scary because, I don't like really going down this road, but I think what we saw with Lou Elizondo having his emails and everything starting to be erased. Well, 30 years ago, we saw that with Bob Lazar. Now, I'm not saying Lazar is telling the truth or not. I'm just saying that, one part of his story is his background got erased. I don't know whether there's a correlation there or not. Two totally different stories. However, with David Grush, we're seeing some real substantive words coming out of not only his mouths, but the people whom he's talking to as well. And now we're learning that there's at least 8 to 10 more David Grush-like people out there that are going to come out publicly. My question to you regarding that is this. What is the point of the whistleblowers coming out if they get immunity, okay, in order to tell their story? Why do you think we as the public are not allowed to hear it if they are able to tell Congress freely what's happened? Why can't they tell us?
Well, there's two aspects. There's the classified briefings and the unclassified briefings. And even in some of the hearings that have happened so far, we will sometimes see the after briefing, which is basically just a quick summation. It might be an hour or less, but that's after they've just come out of a classified briefing. And often that classified briefing will determine what happens in the unclassified briefing. But I think, again, what this points to is that there are major national security concerns. This is much more than just lights in the sky, objects seen. This is hardware. This is technology that is world-changing. As Grush pointed to, there's been a bit of a Cold War between the different nations of the world racing to reverse engineer this technology. So there are concerns that if too much comes out in terms of detail, then not only do you brief the public, but you also brief your adversaries. And there are some adversaries you would rather not have this information. So that's something from a military point of view, from a governmental point of view, from a political point of view, you always have to keep in mind that they are aware that whenever they're briefing the public on something, then adversaries are paying attention. And the knee-jerk reaction of different intelligence communities is you would rather err on the side of caution, because anything you point to with videos, with photos, can give hints about the way the technology works. And because this technology is so civilization changing, it's so next generation, it's not just an iteration, it's numerous iterations above, being able to manipulate gravity and perhaps even space-time. Again, I have heard suggestions these are actually time travel vehicles, not just space travel vehicles. So, of course, when you think about that, how much that could transform civilization, how any nation state that gets to this first and manages to really reverse engineer it has geopolitical dominance right away. So these are some of the concerns they have to balance when they think about briefing the public.
Are they more concerned about Russia, China, and other adversaries and the technology that waits? Or are they more concerned about covering their own butts in front of the American people and the world? Because no country, especially one as powerful as the United States, ever wants to be embarrassed on the world field in front of its own citizens.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think it's more of the latter. It's more that they are trying to buy time and cover for what has been an historic secret keeping campaign that will be shocking to the vast majority of people. Here in the United States, we have a very divided populace right now, and many people already do not trust government, especially on the right, of course. And this is going to send that into record numbers because, again, we're talking about legacy secret programs that have not only done things like potentially, allegedly, agreed to the abduction of citizens in exchange for technology, but have also kept civilization changing technologies from the world. So things like climate change, some of the things we're dealing with, inequalities in the world, could have been dealt with long ago. Even health challenges could have been dealt with long ago, based, again, allegedly on the technologies that were provided or discovered through these different crash retrievals and whatnot, and allegedly through actual interactions, conversations with these beings. So that is a lot to cover up. That is a lot to figure out. How are you going to roll this out without causing mass panic or mass revolution, where people want to overthrow governments because they feel like everything they've learned about history is a lie? This is deep and far-reaching stuff, and I'm not exaggerating. I really think all of this is on the table. So if you even are a new person in government and you recognize this is what government has done before you, this is what people that you've inherited the position from have done previously, then you have to think long and hard about how you roll this out so you don't cause either mass panic or mass revolution.
Well, and what would cause that? Because I think that's a valid point. What would cause the American public to go absolutely haywire on this topic? Is it the fact that maybe, let's just say hypothetically, the U.S. government has been in contact with extraterrestrial species over the decades? Would it be that maybe they have a list of people who've been taken over the years and they know when it's happening and where it's happening and they do nothing about it? This may be a hypothetical question, but I think it's a real question to ask, Darren.
It is. And I think these are questions that people in those offices are considering. And they are probably using game theory and whatnot to try to determine what is the best way to move forward here. I think, again, when you even pay attention to some of the statements that have been made by different political figures recently, those who are taking it seriously, those who have been briefed with some of the shocking revelations, they are already, I would suggest, using NLP to basically frame the way people think about this, to begin to plant into people's minds the seed of the notion that we are not alone and that these beings possess technology that eclipses ours by several degrees. So I think these are things they're already thinking about because they are aware that a couple different things. One, again, you just get the rage from feeling like you've been lied to for this long, and not just lied to about something that doesn't really matter, but about things that could have civilization changing ramifications. When you think about some of the secrets allegedly being kept so that rich oil companies and whatnot can continue to milk people to protect their profits while also squashing these other technological innovations that have allegedly been brought forward either by people or have been provided by these beings or have been arrived at through discovery because of the crash retrievals and whatnot. So when you think about all the things that could go wrong here if they roll this out too quickly, it's considerable. You also have the possibility that some people will just ask themselves, what point is government? What reason do we have to trust and to even rely on a government if these beings are so far beyond our terrestrial way of protecting ourselves that they make our weapons look like child's play, basically, in terms of child's toys? Because, again, allegedly, the history says that people have been abducted from their rooms through locked doors in the middle of the night. Even if the governments of the world knew about it, they couldn't really stop it if they tried. Now, again, I want to be quick to point out here, I think there can be good reasons why those abductions happened. I think that people, again, this is part of the challenge people have to reckon with here, is that people hear about people being taken against their will, allegedly, and various experiments happening medically and whatnot, different reproductive material being taken. Some people will hear that in the public, and that alone could cause mass panic because many people will just have all of their worst fears come to fruition. That, again, they'll question, what is the point of a government and a military if you can't stop that from happening? But again, what I am concerned about is that we have these knee-jerk responses if it comes out too quickly and too sloppily. Even in the David Grush interview with Ross Coulthart, it's unfortunate, I think, that there is this sort of hit piece around, oh, people have died because of this, which kind of hints at this nefarious nature of the phenomenon. But actually, when you look at the history, even amongst government circles, so intra-government kind of communication, frequently over the decades, the notion was, what was passed up the chain was that this does not pose an imminent threat. They are here, they are observing, they are immensely powerful, but they do not pose an imminent threat. So the last thing I think is helpful is to get some extra clickbait to focus on this perhaps one thing that happened, because even when we look at some of the casualties that might have happened, they seem to be potentially incidental. If we send an F-18 after a UFO, and perhaps because of the technology or something, unintentionally that F-18 ends up crashing or something, or the UFO has to act defensively because of something, I'm just bringing up possibilities here, then it's not accurate to say that the UFOs attacked us or are nefarious or evil or mean to do us in. So these are some of the nuances that I'm concerned we really take time to consider. And in light of our political structures, in light of our media structures looking for sensationalist headlines like you talked about earlier, that's going to be a huge challenge.
I think it's going to be a huge challenge too, as we got 2 minutes to go. Getting back to David Grush, and we're going to get more into this in the next half hour. He has said things that have never been said before. When the To the Stars Academy came out, they were very, very tight on talking about UFOs, which they hid as UAPs and convinced the entire world to call them UAPs and not UFOs. Well, this guy didn't fall for it. I'm still a UFO guy, but there was never any talk about who is piloting them. And in the next half hour, we're going to get into that, because I can't believe that David Grush had permission to mention the pilots, because what a lot of people don't understand, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, is we've got about 90 seconds to go here. When he went public with the debrief and he went public with Ross Coulthart, what he was going to say had to be cleared. He just wasn't there rambling because he was being a nice guy and giving a couple of journalists some information. What he said had to be cleared. And that was the first time in this new ufology that we heard about pilots. I'm fascinated by this, and I can't wait to get into it with you. But, I mean, talk about how he would have to be cleared before we get to the next half hour.
Well, that's an interesting question. Again, what has come out when you think about Leslie Kean and people like that who talked about this, basically they just had to clear that he wasn't disclosing classified information. He wasn't giving details that were classified. They didn't attest to whether or not what he was saying was true. He was speaking to some general revelations. I agree with you. Some people will question, even Ezra Klein in his interview with Leslie Kean, questioned whether or not the DOD would approve that. But apparently they did, and it has to do with the fact that he didn't disclose classified details. He was just testifying to something he was arguing for. And again, them clearing it supposedly did not suggest they either were confirming it or denying it.
And when we get into it, we're going to get into those pilots, because this is one of the most profound things we have ever heard in any type of movement towards disclosure confirmation. Is what about the pilots? We knew something had to be flying these craft that were being seen. And we're going to get into that in the next hour here on Spaced Out Radio. We got a power show of UFO talk going on right now from the podcast Point of Convergence. The ExoAcademian himself, Darren King. Great show so far. If you're just tuning on in, this is one you're going to want to hit the podcast format for, rewind and listen to it all again. Spaced Out Radio, second hour is right around the corner. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Having fun yet, Darren?
I am. This is great. It's Great question. And I love thinking about, my brain spins when I start thinking about the implications. When, the last few years, when it's just those of us in ufology talking about it, it's one thing. But when you see politicians, like I say, making these statements, drafting this legislation that seems really intent on getting to the bottom of the legacy crash retrieval programs, and you think about what's on the other side of that in terms of what the general public is going to have to be, briefed on, it's just so difficult to know where it's going to go. But what a time to be alive, right?
You got that right. I'm going to step away for a quick second. If you want to watch Dirty Filth here perform his magic, you can. If you want to step away, we got about 5 minutes here, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Be right back. All over to you, Dirty, and make sure you tell everybody where they can find that fantastic booklet of yours. Don't forget to turn your mic on, Filthy. right, I am back. My mic is always on, Deb. Mic is always on. Dirty Filth didn't turn his on, though. That's okay. He forgot again, didn't he? Yes, he did. He always forgets.
I dig the art. Does he do like original art each time?
All the time. Original. It's a beautiful thing. Yeah, it really is a beautiful thing. We got 5 seconds here. We're going to get going right now. Or do we have another 30? No, we got another 30. No, here we go.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Here we go with hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Queritur. Queritur is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. We're going to get into the pilots. Our guest tonight, Darren King, known as the ExoAcademian in the UFO world. He's got a great podcast called Point of Convergence. We highly suggest that you check it on out. Darren, thank you so much for being with us tonight. It's been an excellent show so far.
Dave, I've thoroughly enjoyed myself, as I knew I would.
Well, I'm excited to get into this topic because I am surprised that the UFO world, the media world, is not blowing up over this. And that was when David Grush, the former UAPTF member, came out and spoke publicly on record that we have crash retrievals. We have pieces of craft that have crashed. We have fully intact craft. And more importantly, we've got the pilots. He didn't say aliens. He didn't say extraterrestrials. He said we have the pilots. Now, I don't know about you, but when I heard that, I stood up straight. I went goosebumps all over the place because I thought, my God, for the last 7 years, we have been told that UFOs and anything flying them is completely different. We're not talking about it. I was told by one insider that the public is ready for UFOs. They are not ready for ETs, extraterrestrials, time travelers, whatever you want to call them. And yet here's David Grush talking about the pilots. What was your thoughts when that sentence came out?
Well, a couple of things. One is when you listen to, again, Leslie Kane and some of her interviews, she's to some degree distanced herself from the body's claim, I think for a couple different reasons. One, because she didn't speak to that specifically in the article that she and Ralph wrote for the debrief, which of course was originally supposed to be in the New York Times and then the Washington Post, Politico, The Hill, a few other places. We would be in a very different place, I think, if it had gotten into the Times or the Post, but we are where we are. And still has a lot happened. I think also she recognizes that, again, this speaks to what I spoke to earlier, which is that there's truth. And then there's what's palatable to the public and to the gatekeepers. And again, I don't just mean the gatekeepers in terms of politicians, government. I also mean the mainstream media. I also mean even people's own minds, what they're willing to grapple with. And so I think in some people's minds, they thought the calculus should be, let's establish, first of all, that these are not of terrestrial origin. But of course, as you and I both know, that begs the question, then what are they? Who made them, right? So it's interesting how the question is kind of begged just by the nature of the revelations already. And yet, like you said about getting goosebumps, just today, when I heard Michael Schellenberger in an interview on The Hill, I think it was one of their shows, short interview, 12 minutes long, he mentioned the term ontological shock twice. And one of the hosts said she actually was getting chills when he mentioned bodies, because like you say, it's a whole different category. Even though, again, ironically, the question is begged when we say these are not of terrestrial origin, this is not Russian, Chinese, American, then what is it? And yet, when people hear the term bodies, we have recovered them. It's like this thing that has been kept in a separate category in your mind that you don't have to entertain. Suddenly, when you're presented with information that there have been bodies recovered, and perhaps we still have them, we still have these cadavers in various bases around the US, for instance, then that makes people really have to grapple with something they were trying to keep separate. So you think about how people think about death, and often it's only when we're confronted with it, our own mortality, when it comes up really close, that we think about it. Up until then, we kind of keep it out of plain sight. We'd rather not deal with it. I think this is the same thing. I think we're used to being the apex predator. And again, it's one thing to think maybe in Alpha Centauri, there's an intelligence that's beyond us. But when you're confronted with the notion that they are here, perhaps have always been here, and that we've recovered the bodies, that brings it home into a whole different level. And I think then people are forced to confront the ontological shock. The public is forced to deal with, there's no way to get around this. You can't say this is something anomalous, but we still don't know what it is. When you talk about bodies, when you talk about biology, physical craft and biological remains, that brings it home into our physical construct. This is not some sort of third realm. This is not some sort of hypnagogic or hypnopompic kind of experience. This is not someone having an experience on psychedelics, although I'm all for all those things. It's in our physical reality, consensus reality, and that is a different degree of shock. So I was enthused when I heard that come out, but I also recognize that brings a whole different level of shock for the public.
It really does. Are you surprised, though, that the UFO world didn't take off with that? I mean, to me, that is one of the most poignant statements that has been made in the last number of years. And I'm still blown away that we're not talking about it. We're talking about the Five Eyes. We're talking about the technology. We're talking about, the free energy. We're talking about everything, and yet we've known since this whole topic came out that something has to be flying these Tic Tacs or these orbs or these black triangles or cigar-shaped objects. If it isn't Russia, China, and they're already stating that these aren't earthly, then who is piloting them? That has been my big gripe over the years. Who's piloting them? Somebody has to, whether it's a remote control from the moon, because there's aliens on the moon, and I'm just throwing that out there, or whether it's something or someone visiting here. And the fact that we, according to Grush, have those bodies, and we don't know if those bodies are dead. We don't know if they're alive. We don't know if they're in a test tube, much like we saw in the movie Independence Day. We don't know where they are. But the idea that he was allowed to make that statement moves the ball way forward, and ufology still looking behind saying, well, let's talk tech. I don't get it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think my frustration and perplexity revolves around how some people stick to the nuts and bolts. Again, I think it speaks to people's psychological defense mechanisms. I think a lot of people unconsciously just don't want to go there. They're not prepared to go there. And so they will sort of run circles around themselves, do cartwheels mentally to not have to go there. And yet it is the question. It is the most interesting question. When you think about UFOs, probably the least interesting aspect is the UFOs, because the most interesting aspect is the intelligence, the beings behind it. I think another reason why it confronts people in a way that they don't want to have to be confronted yet is when we talk about bodies being recovered, then suddenly all of these recollections, these narratives in the experiential literature historically about beings showing up in people's rooms that look insectoid, that look like a cross between a human being and a bug or a lizard or a giant praying mantis. Suddenly all of that's on the table. And again, I think a lot of people are just not prepared psychologically, even within ufology. The ones that focus on the nuts and bolts, I think to some degree are exercising defense mechanisms because there's just so much ontological shock people still have to metabolize.
And I think that's probably a very strong point in regards to that. One of the other things that kind of caught me off guard with David Grush, we've been talking about on the show, is the fact that we have intact craft. How did we get them? Did they just blow a transmission and they couldn't, move any further because their warranty was up? Did they run out of fuel? Did they give a craft? Was there trades involved for crash retrievals? I don't know. We can only estimate and guesstimate what's going on. I'm curious your thoughts about when Grush said we have fully intact craft.
Yeah, it's quite a revelation for numerous reasons. Let's take them one by one here. First of all, the notion that we have crashed vehicles already is a bridge too far for many people. Again, because of assumptions. What you're running into now is seeing the public and different influencers in social media and whatnot that are not familiar with this topic kind of scoffing and saying, come on, they're not going to pilot here from Alpha Centauri and then not be able to navigate around Mount Everest. I mean, it's just not plausible, right? So again, there are some assumptions baked into that. They're assuming that they are coming from across the expanse of the cosmos and then crashing here. That may not be what's going on. I think also it's one thing to deal with crashes and how that would have happened based on their advanced technology. One point I would make there is that on the crash retrieval part, in terms of crashing these vehicles, sometimes if you have really advanced tech, then the last thing you're sort of considering is how your tech might interact with old tech, right? So if you did come from a different civilization that is centuries ahead, at least from us, and you're dealing with the technology of your day in your civilization, you may come here and some form of radar or something that is part of the historical narrative that supposedly brought down some of these vehicles even decades ago might have been just something you were not accounting for. So I don't think it's an issue with they couldn't navigate the atmosphere of the Earth. I think other things happened. I think there's also the possibility that in addition to being interacted strangely with our tech in ways that caused them to crash, there's also, and you hinted at it earlier, the notion that these could be extraterrestrials, as my friend and your friend Mike Masters would suggest.
Love him.
Right. Me too. And if that's the case, then it may be that when they are blipping into our time from some other temporal location, that part of that process involved some trial and error, and that involved some crashes while they perfected the technology. And perhaps that's why we see historically some of these crashes happening in the 40s and whatnot. Of course, what gets tricky is once you have time travel, and once you master it, then perhaps you find ways to go back even further. So trying to find origin points gets tricky because past, present, and future gets tricky. So that's another possibility in terms of why they would have crashed. Now, in terms of the fully intact ones, yes, that's a whole different matter because, again, you ask yourself, what, they landed and then went for a hike and decided to just get picked up and left it behind, or they fully intended it to be a gifting. Now, what's interesting when you think about the timepiece, and Mike's talked about this in one of his books at least, is the notion that you don't actually need, contrary to common sense and intuition, you don't actually need an origin event. You just need to link some point in the future with some point in the past, and you create this consistent loop by which that technology comes into existence. But you don't actually need that one time where someone actually wrote out the blueprint and tested it for the first time. Very complex to understand, but apparently this is what the physics is telling us about how this could work. So them seeding it into our imagination, then perhaps leaving some behind, could be part of the very process of bringing about the technology that is actually space-time travel vehicles. So that's a possibility too. Again, this is civilization-shaking stuff. If in addition to all the other things we've talked about here, in terms of the usual players, these being space aliens and whatnot, if they're actually time travelers, if they're actually in some way related to us and perhaps coming back in order to deal with some sort of coming cataclysm, as has been rumored for quite a while now, then that opens up a whole different can of worms. And of course, one of the revelations out there, one of the notions anyway, is that even the Roswell crash involved recovery of bodies that were found to have some DNA in common with us. And part of the story is that that was what many people on the inside thought was a bridge too far for the public to handle. It's one thing to handle, these are Zeta Reticulans. It's another thing to handle, these are bug-like looking beings that somehow have human DNA in them or have DNA in common with us, at least hinting at a common ancestor. These are all things that are on the table when you think about crash retrievals, both in terms of actual craft and also recovered intact craft.
The idea that they are here wherever they came from, I think that is, part of the message that is trying to be covered up right now is where they are coming from. Because if you have the bodies, you can tell there is going to be clues and information within those craft that detail where these subjects may be coming from. And, I could see where that would be classified as a national security secret. Okay. But the idea that we have these intact craft and we don't know where they're coming from, how do we play out if the government isn't going to give us that information? How do we play out and dig to know whether we should be afraid or not as humanity on whether or not these craft are coming here on a regular basis from wherever they are in space, or if it's us from the future? What do these bodies look like of these pilots? I mean, there's so many questions that are begging for answers that we will never get. And it's unfortunate that it's going down this path.
It is, but I think there's a lot we can surmise based on what is already out there in the experiential literature and ufological history, basically. Because one of the things that's interesting about the David Grush revelations is much of what he said has already been in the mix for ufology, which again speaks to the notion that part of the plan, the strategy historically was to leak some truth in the midst of a bunch of lies, so as to try to exhaust people who were trying to make sense of what was real and what wasn't. So what we found with the David Grush revelations was that many of the things that have leaked are actually true historically. Now, again, the skeptics are going to say, and this is kind of hilarious when you think about it, all David Grush did was like a crash course on all the hilarious sci-fi history of ufology, put it together in a volume and said this is what he was privy to, as if that was actually what happened, which is ridiculous. Again, this is how easy it is to cover these things up when people already have so much prejudice, so much bias. They come in with assumptions about what space aliens would look like, assuming, first of all, that they are space aliens, which, again, we don't know, or they may be, but that might be only one component of what they are, right? So I think what's interesting is seeing how, first of all, each of us that have been in this field for a long time have had to go through many different levels of awareness, different levels of opening up new possibilities, because the data demanded that we do that. Now we're seeing the general public, politicians, media people beginning to just begin that process that took us years. And they're, again, in our 2-minute media cycle, people want the answer now. What is it? How can we get past it? Who won the Stanley Cup, right? We're on to the next thing. So what I would suggest is that while we are frustrated we're not getting more information, again, going back to Mike Masters' work, the fact that these beings so consistently look humanoid, whether they're bug-like humanoid, lizard-like humanoid, or fully human-looking or slightly human and something a little bit different. His point, again, from an evolutionary biology point of view, is that there's no way they can't be related to us. It's just the chances of another species arising on a different planet in a different star system would have the same kind of environmental pressures to create the same sort of biological forms is so low that the answer is staring us in the face, according to him. And I think it's a very compelling argument. Again, I think that the overall phenomenon in terms of beings and kinds of interactions with different elements of reality that go beyond the consensus, that's a much broader question. But the specific group of entities that have been interacting with us for decades specifically, and potentially around some sort of coming cataclysm that may be in our near future, I think the fact that they are so consistently humanoid and sometimes fully human looking, we think about the Space Brothers and things like that. We think about Terry Lovelace and people who have been on craft and seen human beings walking around while also seeing reptilians and greys and mantis beings. This speaks to a splicing of the genome in the future and perhaps beings coming from different points across time, but somehow connected to the Earth. I think that's staring us in the face when we look at that particular part of the literature.
Yeah, I think it does come down to that there has to be some sort of earthly connection or something that we want. Interesting question here from Ian over in the UK. Do you think we are being desensitized with UFO information overload right now?
Well, I think that desensitization is an interesting thing. Sometimes people will argue that when you're bombarded with information, it's either to desensitize you and to prep you for being, again, becoming privy of information that will be shocking. Other times people will say that you're bombarded with information to distract you from something else. So one of the interesting, again, notions from skeptics to this information coming forward is that they'll say, aha, this is just part of the psyop. What is the government really doing behind the scenes that they're trying to distract you from with all of this information about UFOs? But I think that when I look at this, I just see that we are being confronted with information in a new era, in a social media era. Again, I spoke to this earlier. In decades past, there's been hints that when information came out, it was quickly suppressed. You could quickly character assassinate people who were claiming these things, even people with strong credibility behind them. And you could coordinate amongst a few major papers around the world and news outlets. You could quickly suppress this. And again, scoff, ridicule was the usual modus operandi to try to shut this down. Just recently, there was a really moving piece in the Huffington Post. I'm not sure if you saw it, but it spoke to this person whose father was a reported abductee and had seen these craft and had seen even cattle mutilations happen in his ranch, I think in Montana. And this person basically just wrote his dad off and thought he was crazy. He bought into the disinformation campaign, and his dad died alone, being discredited by his community and his family, not being accepted at all. And this person was talking about seeing the Grush revelations and suddenly having to grapple with, wait a second, was all that true? And I let my dad die alone with those revelations? No, that's a lot to deal with. So I think that's what we're really dealing with, is the overload is because, again, we live in a media cycle where this stuff can get spun up quickly. You're going to get some sort of sensational headlines mixed in. But bottom line, these are real revelations coming forward, and that's what's really behind it.
Great timing on that one, because we do have to go to break here at the bottom of the hour here. We are halfway through tonight's show. We got another 90 minutes to go here on Spaced Out Radio. But we got Darren King, the ExoAcademian and the host of the podcast Point of Convergence, hanging out with us until the top of the hour. Where do the experiencers play in on this? Because after all, they're getting all the high, strange woo, and it's not nuts and bolts. We'll figure out where the experiencers come in right after this on Spaced Out Radio. Dude, this is flying on by. Flying on.
It really is. Man, what time is it?
Well, it's 10:29 here, so 1:29 your time.
And we go till what time?
Another till top of the hour.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it is. It's flying by. Absolutely. I knew it would. You would.
Damn it. Way too good tonight. Way too good.
Yeah, this is a great dialogue. I think that this is the kind of stuff I want people to wrestle with, like the deeper nuances of it. And often you don't get a chance to express it. So all good.
It's wonderful tonight, man. wonderful tonight. Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Happy to, my friend. Happy to.
Well, we're going to have to do it again. That's all that means, is we're going to have to do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. I was on what's the show that by your Canadian compadres there?
Louis and Jason.
UFO Studies podcast. Yeah, I was on that one too. And they said, you're a great guy and you're good friends with them. So I'm kind of doing the Canadian tour here.
Yeah, I love those guys. They're really good. I like to bug Louis because Louis is a lot of fun to bug. But I'll tell you, it's those guys there. I know where they live. We have a lot of mutual friends as well. I got to get down there and have a beer with those guys. Want to show you? Yeah, they're about an hour and a half east of Vancouver.
Okay.
Want to show you guys some weird stuff here. This is me in AI. Thank you to Mr. Eon in the chat room, who has been playing around with I damn well look good thin. I got to lose some weight because I look good thin. I'm not like, look at this stuff that he was making. This is all on the Woo train here.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, there's a bunch here. There's this one here where I'm looking like, what the hell's going on? Another picture of me with some weirdos there. My goodness. This is just, it blows me away. Absolutely blows me away.
Yeah, we're in a different world when AI can produce such vivid and realistic images.
Oh my gosh. Which way am I going? I like the Bigfoot ones here. This is the ones that crack me up. Holy cow.
Didn't think wearing glasses? Yeah.
I didn't think I looked like a Sasquatch with a little dinky right there. Holy cow. Come on. At least give me some love there, man. Yeah. Weird. Looking older than what I do there with the aliens. And yeah, he went crazy on these, man. Like, this is just awesome.
Yeah, that's a cool one. Like the depth.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw our logo on a bunch of these and start making these our new promos for Twitter and everything.
Right.
It looks kind of badass. Hey, Cliff Sy, how you doing? Yep. Yeah, the old, big Sasquatch Dave there with the pinky dinky. That's not fun. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. Thank you, Kira, for adding to the super chat. Very much appreciate the love and support. And give Mark a big hug for me if you don't mind, because I miss that big guy. And thank you also to Pam H, Deb, Enki, and Jeff for the great super chats. Very much appreciate the love. Hi, Susan Alloway. How you doing? Glad you're enjoying tonight's show. I'll put that up there. And yeah, Mr. Eon making me look almost handsome. Mr. Eon did them for me, the unknown. Good to have you back tonight. Yeah, this is a man who takes the credit right there. Mr. Eon, literally the voice of the gods. Darren, if you heard Ian speak, you'd be like blown away. It's like he sounds like the British James Earl Jones.
Oh, really?
Oh, nice. I would pay money to have his voice.
Huh.
Oh, it's that gorgeous. Radio guys, we get hung up on beautiful voices, and he's got one of those. Yeah. We got 15 seconds. Hey, if you're new here, do us a favor. Give us a thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever you feel we deserve. It helps with the algorithms. After the show, leave a comment. And, of course, if you're new, hit subscribe, ring the bell, because we are here 7 days a week. Here we go. We passed the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight, and we're still deep in the UFO world. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate you tuning us on in on Spaced Out Radio tonight. Reminder to you, if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Here we go as we finish off strong with Darren King, the ExoAcademian. Point of Convergence is the name of his podcast. Highly recommend you check it on out. It is pro 100% awesome. Darren, thank you so much for being with us. This show is flying on by. The one thing I love about you is you have a very scientific mind. You know, you're a highly educated person when it comes to this topic, but you also understand and you've been able to grasp the fact that there are people out there who are having major experiences. This isn't about psychosis. This isn't about, you know, people's minds playing tricks on them or falling asleep and having lucid dreams about aliens and UFOs and everything that goes on in between. Why, as someone in your position, your knowledge, do you care so much about the experiencer?
For a couple different reasons. One, because I've had my own experiences. I had an encounter in the early 2000s where an entity appeared in a hotel room I was in with my wife at the time and our daughter, and my wife was pregnant with our son at the time. So when you've had an encounter like that, personally, it just lands this as something that happens in reality. Not sure if you ever saw that movie Magnolia, but there's this scene where frogs are falling from the sky and the kid sees that and goes, this is something that happens. Like he registers mentally, this is part of reality. So for me, when I had that experience, I recognize that there are things that happen that are not explained by consensus reality. This being went through the wall and then came back through the wall, maybe behave in ways that didn't make any sense. So all of these high strangeness aspects of the phenomenon I've encountered myself. So that's the first thing. Secondly, some of my best friends are people who've had these encounters, including the historic abduction encounters. People were involved in that, and these are people that I trust fully, and I reckon with what they had to go through. Again, we think about that story I just shared about that father who was a rancher in Montana, and his entire community, his family rejected him because of that. I feel for people like that. When you're encountering something and you're on the frontier of those encounters and your society is so against registering and reckoning with this reality that they will character assassinate you, call you a fraud, call you mentally insane, is unfortunate is too small a word to describe that. It's really heartbreaking, and it's its own kind of insanity. Again, a scientific approach is when you have this large body of data, where you have many, many people from different walks of life all around the world describing very similar encounters, people who have no history with the UFO phenomenon prior to this, and people who have reputations, jobs, careers, families. They do not want to be doing this. They're not making money or becoming rich and famous because of it. They're saying it. They're coming out and making these claims because it's real and because they're trying to grapple with it. They're trying to deal with the ontological shock themselves. So I am convinced by the data. In any other kind of field, you mentioned earlier how this field doesn't get this fair shake compared to others. In any other kind of field, if you had a huge data set of consistent experiences describing very similar looking beings, very similar kinds of messages, that would be taken as a data set. Each of those is an aspect of data, a datum, and together it's a data set. And you should be considering that in terms of research. But instead, people say, well, that's just anecdotal. It's just people telling stories. No, it's much more than that. When you have that many people, thousands of people, tens of thousands of people having these kinds of encounters, and there being so much consistency and overlap in the nature of the encounters, that's telling us something fundamental about our reality. It's happening. even if it stretches our very understanding of how it's happening. John Mack really dealt with this. Is this some sort of liminal zone? Is this some sort of third realm? No, it's more than that. Somehow these beings are able to at least traverse wherever they're coming from and actually be in people's bed. I have a friend who said the beings appeared in their room, and it really hit home when they got up on the bed and they could feel the mattress going down because the beings were on the bed. That's when it's like in your face, this is happening. This is not, again, a hypnagogic experience. It's not a lucid dream, like you said. This is reality. And to me, the data shouts at us that this is real in the same way that Michael Masters makes a compelling point that the humanoid form is telling us something. It's staring us in the face. In the same way, the huge body of consistent literature behind experiencer accounts tells us this is real.
Why do we get hooked up, and so many skeptics get hooked up on the fact that it's anecdotal evidence? We keep hearing this, that it's anecdotal. We can't trust it. The human mind is fragile. It forgets a lot. Okay. Yet these are people who haven't really, Darren, experienced the ultimate. You know, it's like they don't understand that it's like being in a major car accident where all of a sudden everything slows down to slow motion, where you're looking around, you can see the time of day, you can see people walking on the street, you see the vehicle coming at you, you know there's nothing you can do. You know, this is what we're talking about. I think we don't give enough credence to how good the memory is in traumatic situations.
That's an absolutely great point. Completely agree with you. Like you say, your mind slows down and you remember minuscule detail. Every iota of a microsecond that goes by, you remember. Speaking of that, PTSD is a really interesting piece when it comes to this, because back in the 90s, there was actually a study done around people's physiological response to the memories of these encounters. And again, what's interesting here is you cannot fake this. If you want to call these people frauds, then you cannot fake that kind of involuntary physiological response. It's not something you can conjure up by just wanting to believe it or telling a tall tale. Either your body has trauma and it shows up physiologically, or it doesn't. But if it does show up, then it means the body did experience trauma. You didn't just make up a story. What's interesting is there was a study done where these people actually investigated the degree of trauma that was in people's bodies who'd had these encounters. And what was found that not only was it just as high as Vietnam veterans, for instance, it was actually higher. The amount of PTSD people were dealing with, because you have the ontological shock on top of everything else, right? It's not just that it's shocking. I told you earlier, I got chased by a mountain lion there in British Columbia. But that's a being I know exists. It was freaky, I can guarantee you. I had PTSD afterwards. But that's a being that was within my mentality of what does exist. It was unlikely but possible that you're going to run into one when you're out in the woods somewhere. Like that happened. It's a whole different thing when a being that should not exist is somehow in your physical reality. And when that happens, it incurs deep shock in your body that is registered somatically and can show up in these studies. And again, you cannot fake this. What's shocking here that speaks to just the degree to which people want to bury their heads in the sand is when it was shown that these people that were abductees had just as much, in fact, even more, again, involuntary physiological signs of something that actually happened in physical reality. Instead of acknowledging that, the bias, the prejudice in these people conducting the study was so great that they tried to come out and say, turns out we found out you can fake this because we know alien abductions are not real. And these people seem to show symptoms of PTSD. Thankfully, even other people within academia heard that and said, you're contradicting yourself here. The whole point is you cannot fake PTSD symptoms. The fact that this is happening and that you're seeing it physiologically in involuntary responses that you have no control over suggests something did happen, and it happened in physical reality.
And that's the big thing there too, is, you know, people like Dr. Gary Nolan are learning a lot about what is happening through the abduction process because of what experiencers are saying. And I like the point that Dr. Nolan has also said that, you know, we wouldn't be as far in knowing where to search for UFOs or what is happening to people if people didn't tell their stories of their encounters. Whether it's a black triangle in the sky over Seattle or whether it's an alien abduction in Montreal, Quebec, it doesn't matter. Those stories, even though there is limited evidence, are still areas to take us down paths of where we need to research. And I fail to understand where the UFO community continues to fall on that point. Maybe it's a little bit too much tinfoil over the years. Maybe it's a little bit too much nuts and bolts over the previous few years. It has to be a combination of that.
Yeah, I think one of the questions I'm most interested in is what prevents this from being metabolized, not just in the mainstream, but even, like you say, within segments of ufology. You get some people who just do not want to go there, who consistently reject any kind of experience or account. I think, again, a lot of it comes down to psychological defense mechanisms. I think that if we're honest with ourselves, we often are not objective observers. We do not treat all evidence equally. And this field is a prime example of that, both in terms of how it's been rejected and uninvestigated by science and scoffed at by politicians and whatnot over time. But again, even within ufology, you get some people, for instance, Jacques Vallée talked about this, that he was just as frustrated by the ufologists who were convinced that these were space aliens, full stop, and they would reject and suppress any of the other high strangeness that pointed to something more complex than that, because they wanted to be, I'm speaking of the ufologists who favored the ET hypothesis, wanted to be accepted by mainstream scientists. So they actually suppressed parts of evidence and would only take up cases that supported their notions, their favored hypothesis. And again, this speaks to the degree to which psychological defense mechanisms are in play here. And this is why I think disclosure, to answer your earlier question again, is very, very complex, because again, it's not just a matter of what is true. It's about what is palatable and what we are willing to really grapple with psychologically and sociologically as a civilization.
Is humanity ready for ET contact? Are they ready for the experiencers to be right?
I think many are not. It's interesting how you'll hear these studies that are done where they'll poll Americans, for instance, and say, do you believe intelligent ET life exists somewhere? The vast majority of people will say yes. Even most astrophysicists would say yes, again, based on just the sheer size of the universe. And that even if life-bearing planets are in the minority, there's so many galaxies and so many solar systems that there still should be plenty within the Goldilocks zone that would produce, a sophisticated life. But again, it's a whole different thing psychologically when people are confronted with the notion that they're already here. They perhaps have always been here. And again, run circles around us to such a degree that we fooled ourselves into thinking, listen, if they were here, we would know, we would see certain signs, we would get radio signals, right? We think about NASA and the SETI program looking for these barbaric technologies that we only employed for a couple decades in the 60s and 70s, and we've already surpassed those. And yet we haven't really changed the kinds of ways we're looking for signs of life in the universe. Again, I think all of this betrays not only our prejudices and our biases in terms of where we're looking and what we're looking for, but again, the part that's tricky is the shadow parts, the parts we don't want to deal with in ourselves, the parts that we're afraid of, how fear manifests. And one of the main ones is that we're so used to being the apex species. We think that we are the top dogs. We are the pinnacle of intelligence. And so it's one thing to say there's other sophisticated intelligence that can equal ours, or perhaps just have some more sophisticated tech. But when we're confronted with the fact that even their understanding of consciousness is so sophisticated that they can control our behavior, impact our perception, mask themselves, right? Screen memories, all that comes into play here. Again, I think most people are not ready for that. And yet now that it's underway, this is the process we're in.
It really is the process. So how do we go into making the experiencer more prosaic in this process? How do we get that person, whether it's Whitley Strieber or whether it's myself or yourself or anybody who's had ET contact, how do we get them more into that mainstream conversation without sounding nut bar, sort of, in a way, because when you start talking about anal probes, when you start talking about hybridization programs, or women's losing fetuses, it gets a little bit, even for me at times, who does this every day, it gets a little bit, wow, is that really happening? Let alone somebody who's not maybe a skeptic, but is learning in this field and trying to figure out if this is really real, or people are just have way too much aluminum foil around their heads.
Well, ironically, I think the elements in the data that most cause people to reject it because it sounds too like sci-fi. Again, things like hybridization programs, like you said, fetuses disappearing, that kind of thing, medical tests, including anal probes as part of those medical tests. All of that sounds like sci-fi to people who are expecting ETs from Alpha Centauri. But again, if these beings are somehow connected to us or somehow perhaps from our relative future, although again, I think our understanding of space-time is so primitive that I think it's probably much more complex than that. There's even been some notions introduced for experiencers that I'm aware of that even our understanding of there being 3 dimensions of space and 1 of time, we're better off inverting that according to some of these beings in terms of some of the messages that have been provided. But the point is that actually you have someone like, again, Michael Masters, someone with a PhD, someone with a background specialty in the hominin line. When they come forward and say to the mainstream, actually, this makes a lot of sense. If in the future we have suffered some sort of malady where we need new genetic variants, we can no longer propagate the species through normal means, maybe because of some sort of disaster, some sort of cataclysm, perhaps, that they're here to prevent, or because of even gene mutation we did voluntarily at some point in the future, then the one way you would try to address that would be to come back in time if that technology was possible. And again, there's nothing really to suggest it's not. And if it was possible, then you would come back and find variants in your ancestors. That would be the best way to actually help address some sort of malady in the future. So suddenly, the hybridization programs, the abductions, the fetuses disappearing, all of this suddenly makes a lot of sense. Even the beings, again, that look humanoid with a mix of other kind of genomes, but genomes that, again, are located right here on Earth. When you start thinking about that, then actually it's staring you in the face. And where most people would reject it and say, that sounds like sci-fi, actually it's saying, no, this sounds biological, this sounds physiological, this sounds like it's tied to evolutionary history and perhaps even space-time and time travel. When you think about that, again, it's someone like Michael Masters with a PhD who's recognized in academia coming forward. When he makes those arguments, that really begins to at least open some people's minds. So I think one of the ways that we will bridge this for the mainstream is that we will have more and more academics. And I'm aware of different academics who are coming forward. They're contacting me because of the work I do with the John Mack Institute and whatnot, that want to be involved. They are recognizing, they can see that there is a there. There's something going on here. It's physiological in some way. It's some way physical, but also stretches our understandings of the boundaries of what is reality. But they want to get involved. And I think it's going to be involvement from those kind of circles that help to finally ground this into the mainstream.
As for the public who is being taken, do you believe they are being taken by the, as I like to bug Michael Masters, the extra temptation island terrestrials, or whatever he calls them? I know it's extra tempestrals. I just like bugging him about it. Do you think we are being visited from outer space? That's why we have all of these different beings that are being seen, from humanoids to mantids to reptilians to the 6-foot grays with black eyes. I mean, all of these different types of species that are out there that we wouldn't expect coming from Earth, because we got a pretty good grasp on what's alive and what's not outside of Bigfoot and Dogman. We have a pretty good grasp of what's here.
Well, I think my expectation is that whatever ends up being the case, it will stretch the current models we have to a breaking point. I think we will come up with models eventually that transcend, and to some degree include, but mostly transcend the notions we have now. Because again, routing back to the beginning of our conversation, I think this is ultimately a question about the nature of ultimate reality. We assume that our notions of space-time are pretty sufficient when we postulate things like interdimensionals or extraterrestrials or extratempestrials or ultraterrestrials or cryptoterrestrials. All of these hypotheses are based in our confidence in our understanding of reality. And again, what I like to point out is that we can only compare how much we know based on what we used to know. And again, that always sets us up to have this hubris that we are close to pinnacle knowledge. But we don't know what's out in front of us. We understand how nature behaves, but we don't ultimately understand what is behind nature. And again, even within the physics now, we have cutting edge physicists like Nima Arkani Hamed, who have nothing to do with the UFO phenomenon whatsoever, that are telling us that space-time is doomed, that as a model, it cannot work. There must be deeper structures. So again, if there's deeper structures we're only just beginning to hypothesize about and conceive of, then that tells us that probably the models we're working with in terms of whether or not these are space aliens or time travelers or interdimensionals, probably all of those will be collapsed and new models will form, new ideas will form based on new understandings of reality. But even with the extraterrestrials, again, the Earth is moving. Our entire solar system is spinning through space constantly. So they're already having to move through space to get here as well. So they're not just time travelers. They're not like the DeLorean in Back to the Future, just racing and going a certain speed and then they're back in a different place. You actually do have to move through space as well. We also hear, again, part of the literature around what they are saying, these beings that actually do say, by the way, they often say to experiencers that they are us from the future, so far in the future that we wouldn't really be able to grapple with it, really. So again, it's not just the evidence that Michael Masters points to in terms of the humanoid shape and whatnot, and the hybridization programs, but even the beings themselves, that they are connected to us. They say things literally like, you are us and we are you. There's this one case I like to point out where someone said it would be easier to deal with you ontologically if you weren't so damn ugly. And the being looked at this person and said, my dear, one day you will look just like us. Why is that in the experiential literature? These are things we need to look at, again, when we're pulling together our notions. But again, even if they are to some degree us from the future, I think that's only part of the story. And again, I think our notions of space-time are so early and primitive. And again, if space-time itself is not even foundational, then there's something more complex going on here. But I think we are involved in terms of our genetic history and where things are going.
My friend, it's time for us to wrap this up. Unfortunately, Darren, 2 hours has flown on by, and it's unbelievable how quickly it has. If you want to stick around for another half hour, I know Tim Senor would love to join us, or if you want to head off to bed, you're more than welcome to, because I said, hey, it's only 2 hours long, but man, what a show it's been, Darren, the ExoAcademian, and I cannot wait to get you back on, man.
Thank you, my friend. I am pretty tired because it is pretty late on the East Coast here. So I think I'll sign off, but I've thoroughly enjoyed it and would be happy to join you again.
Absolutely. We're definitely going to make that happen, Darren. And tell everybody, your podcast name is Point of Convergence. I know you got a YouTube channel with that as well. Make sure everybody who's listening, find it, go hit subscribe. You're not going to be disappointed in the information on UFOs that is on Point of Convergence. The ExoAcademian, Darren King, thank you so much. And up next on Spaced Out Radio, Tim Senor is going to join us right from the top. Don't have a story tonight from Steve Stockton. He's too busy partying for the 4th of July. I don't blame him. It's a good time. Hour 3 of Spaced Out Radio is next. Wonderful, Darren. Thank you for a great, great show, man. I hope I did you some justice too, man.
You did, absolutely. Great questions. And again, we got into a lot of the nuance, which I love to do. So, yeah, it was great, man. And we'll do it again. Absolutely.
Anytime you want to come on, dude, just let me know and we'll make it happen because our audience is going to be better off with voices like yours. So we'll talk soon, okay?
All right. Sounds good, my friend. Appreciate it.
Take care.
All right. See you.
Bye. All right, guys, I'm going to be just 2 seconds here. All right. So I got Beth and CS. Thank you for the lovely super chat. Very much appreciate the love. Thank you. Hey, Tim, we're bringing you on board right off the bat, okay? Because Steve forgot to send me an episode. Not a big deal. We love Steve Stockton. Yeah, that I don't understand what's with the light thing. I don't get that whatsoever. Bugs me, to be blunt. Beth would make a great guest, Kira. Well, let's get an email. Tell her we'll bring her on. All right, we got 1 minute to go here. Hey, there's Thurston Howell III. hanging on out with us tonight. The Doug Shelby was late tonight. Samantha Hazelwood Gray had him pulling weeds in the driveway all evening long. That's what it was. He's blaming the aliens, but it was Samantha who's making him weed the driveway and the gardens tonight. Wham Bam Ham, thank you for the love with the super chat, my friend. Appreciate you. You haven't been around in a while. Glad to see you. And big thank you to Wham Bam Ham, CS, Beth, Kira, Pam H, Deb, Enki, and Jeff for the great super chats tonight. It's a great way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. We got some really cool stuff coming for you guys very, very soon. We're going to have an announcement soon. And here we go with hour number 3.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dave Scott, and I'm the guy who wears a lot of tinfoil in my extracurricular time. Thank you to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us, please, at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Dave the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Queriture. Queriture is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Usually we go to Steve Stockton for Among the Missing at this time, but Steve's partying hard for the 4th of July down south, so we figured we'd let him, his sultry voice, and his fantastic beard have a couple of days off here for the holiday. So we're going to get right to it. Here's little Timmy Senor and the UFO Report.
Nobody's going to know. They're going to know.
Tim, it's only a couple weeks before you head north of the border. Try your first Tim Hortons ice cap and do some filming in the wilderness and the jungles of British Columbia. Man, it's good to chat with you again. How you doing, buddy?
Doing great. I've been trying on running shoes in hopes to meet Bigfoot. Lightweight running shoes, I think, is the answer for my future. I will, like I said before, I will be a speck on the horizon. I'll be the first guy running the other way. Push Dave towards Bigfoot and run the other way. That's my plan.
I look forward dude, I cannot wait to watch you sprint out of the forest like there is no tomorrow. Yeah. I am so looking forward to you getting freaked out, because the area where we can't say much, but the area where we're filming, I've never been out there at night, and I'm scared to be out there at night. Yeah. And I think strange things are going to happen out there at night. But we're going.
Yeah. First stick break and little Timmy is gone. Crack. Pachow.
That's all right. We'll have little Marky Spender there lined up, you know, waiting to take down all the big animals that want to come use Tim as food. You know, you don't need to worry.
I'm an hors d'oeuvre. I'm just going to be the warm-up for the rest of you.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I like the fact that we're, we're psyching you out a little bit about getting up here for filming our little adventure that we're going to be doing. And hopefully there's a television company out there that's going to see the value in what we're doing and say, hey, these silly Canadians got something up here. We're gonna do something about it.
Yeah, they're feeding the Sasquatch Americans. Little Timmy comes back with an arm missing. Oh, it's great TV. That's fantastic. Yeah. They're feeding Americans to their Canadian Sasquatch.
That's what we do. That's what we do. That's why we're putting you out there.
Lured up there.
You got that right. You got that right. I'll tell you, man. That was my first time really getting in depth into a conversation with the ExoAcademian Darren King. What a level-headed ufologist. It was such a ray of sunshine over the drama and everything else that's going on in the field. It was just so nice to have a high quality conversation, and I hope our audience enjoyed it too, regarding the UFO phenomena and the fact that I love the fact how he believes that we're dropping stories left, right, and center. Tim, I mean, how many times do we talk on this show that we are the only ones bringing up the things about like the pilots or the fully intact crash retrievals? And here's Darren saying, how are we forgetting about this? How are we not covering this? How is this not front page news? That we have pilots and we have fully intact craft. The questions journalists should be dying to answer, which is, how did we get them? Okay, where are they coming from? Everything along those lines. And yet, we're not doing it, man. We're not doing it whatsoever. And it's strange to him. It's strange to me. I know it's strange to you. And to add to the fact that, he's very pro experiencer in the knowledge that, over the last few years, we've become so nuts and bolts in this topic that we've really forgotten about the people who are having these extraordinary experiences, that it's not all what Mick West or other skeptics say, not to put the skeptics down, because they do play a prominent role in keeping us straight online. But we can't forget about the fact that there are people out there who are having extraordinary, phenomenal experiences. How do you feel about that? You listened in.
I did. Very level-headed guy, down to earth. He's obviously thought deeply on this and is well knowledged on the topic from all perspectives. And that's what we need. That's, the more people that are listening to that, both sides getting a full big picture perspective and not being hyped out by the media, the more people that are following that, I think the better, because really this isn't something that we're suddenly going to wake up one morning to a headline on. There's no breaking news, really. If there is, it's something most of us have seen coming, and if it is breaking, then it's often not real. So, not to get caught up in that hype is massively important, and to look for those little hints as to what is real and what's to come.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man, because we need more Darren ExoAcademians in this field and less hypersensitive people who are going to jump on every, 5 words in a paragraph and play the aha gotcha game. Honestly, it was just an absolute breath of fresh air to get, very thorough answers as to the cover-ups, as to what's going on. Like, we need more of that. That gentleman right there should be, when we talk about mainstream media covering this subject, that is a guy who needs to talk. We don't need more Nick Pope. We need more Darren Kings out there who are bringing level-headed answers with information to the table. That's what we need. We don't need regurgitation of what Lou Elizondo said every interview. And I'm wowed right now by how amazing that first 2 hours of tonight's show was. Wow.
Went by very quickly. Indeed. And he also, is bringing up, is it Michael McMasters, who we've had on the show?
Yeah.
And that's a great reference and somebody to also listen closely to, very level-headed and not taking the hype at all seriously, but more relishing in some of the silliness that takes place, which I think is really all you can do. If you're not talking about the subject itself and you're talking about the circle of people that all scramble around the topic, there's nothing but entertainment there. It's just a mess. So, yeah, it's important to discern the two and to recognize them and to, appreciate them both, because they both exist and there's no way around it. So might as well have fun with it. If you're going to deal with the social side, if you will, of UFO topic.
I agree. And, hearing somebody like Darren, it gives me, we can all get caught up in the hype, the drama of what's going on. Okay. There's no fear in his voice. There's no, hyping up the threat narrative. There's no hyping up, everything. It's taking it all in stride, and we just need more of that type of voice. We really do need more of that type of voice. And we're going to try and get Darren on here a little bit more often. Maybe not once a month or twice a month, but maybe once every 3 months, bring him on, 2 to 4 months, 3 months, bring them on just to get an update of what's going on, because that's the type of level-headed information that our audience needs to learn about this topic, whether they're brand new or whether they've been studying this for the last 40, 50 years. That's what we need,
That's right.
and that's what I love about it, man. That's what I love about it.
We cover the woo, but once in a while, it's nice to have the voice of reason.
Absolutely. All right, let's get to the topics at hand tonight, my friend,
All right.
because you've been busy scouring the internet. We're going to start off with Chris Mellon and the Scientific Coalition of UAP Studies, otherwise known as the SCU. What happened here, man?
So this past week, Chris Mellon came forward publicly and gave a quick conference presentation to the SCU members on his position on the UAP topic. And so, as we know, Chris spent nearly 20 years in the U.S. intelligence community, including serving as the Minority Staff Director of the Senate Intelligence Committee and Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense. Whoops, I just lost my page. For intelligence under Presidents Clinton and Bush. And he has taught at Georgetown University, authored over a dozen articles on public policy issues, and received numerous awards. Chris believes the U.S. needs to undertake a focused effort to investigate the UAP phenomenon and is confident that if we do, we will be able to solve an important national security problem and in the process possibly advance our understanding of the universe. And so the SCU organization has come up with the Anomalous Aerospace Phenomena Conference, or AAPC. And this serves as the SCU's primary scientific outreach event, as well as a critical fundraising event. And all proceeds and additional donations are used to support, publish, and disseminate scientific research on UAP throughout our growing community. And so Chris Mellon came forward with his brief presentation and support of the AAPC event in a way to kind of recognize this organization and help support its outreach for a donation. And also, very significantly, in my opinion, at the same time, we had Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, who came forward with his similar presentation. And he's significant because Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, PhD, is a U.S. Retired U.S. Navy and is the CEO of Ocean Consulting and is the host of the American Blue Economy podcast. And so he is a former administrator of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and currently contributes as a research affiliate at Harvard University's Galileo Project. So he will be one of the keynote speakers at the Anomalous Aerospace Phenomenon Conference this year. And the title of his talk is The New Scientific Revolution of UAP. And so this is important because he's kind of a newer voice in the community and maybe somebody that could potentially be called at some point with information on this topic as we move forward. And so this is just new information coming out in a very obvious attempt to support the forward movement of SCU with some pretty high-ranking people in our government coming forward to put their stamp of approval here. Dave, this kind of presentation is interesting. Do you have some narrative that we can enjoy on this?
Well, I think with Chris Mellon speaking up and speaking on behalf to the SCU about and showing support for their offerings and what they bring to the table, I think is good. Because we need, for people who don't know what the SCU is, it is a collaboration of scientists and academics from around the world who have come together, some very privately, some very out in the open, have come together to build the scientific coalition of UAP studies, where they can actually look into and pass information and study cases regarding UFOs and UAPs. Okay. And they do very detailed work. It allows them a database to bounce information off. So say, for instance, an astrophysicist may bounce information off a geologist because of a crash site or a crash retrieval or something along whatever the reports give. And that's a good thing that we see happening. The difficulty with it is a lot of the scientists who are part of the SCU are also part of government contracts. Okay, but there is a healthy mix of those. I have a very good friend of mine who is on the board of directors of the SCU. And it's not one of these things where we talk every day or every month, but every couple of months we get together, we chat about the SCU and where they're going and what they're trying to accomplish. Chris Mellon has always been a fan of the science of this subject, which I think is a good thing. And for him to put his stamp of approval on the direction the SCU is going, I think is great. The problem with the SCU is that they are all nuts and bolts. Yes, there are a number of members from, Gary Dolan being one of them, Jacques Vallée being another, who do believe that the experiencers are having a role to play. But the majority of them are nuts and bolts people who are looking into the excitement of the technology and the science and the physics and the chemistry behind these craft and where they're coming from to help solve the riddles that are posed by these questions. So I like it. I've never really been wary about Chris Mellon. I've always been wary about what he stands for, if that makes sense. I don't know. Maybe I overstep myself there for a minute.
Not at all. And what you're saying is valid and great highlights that you bring. Also consider that SCU was one of the earlier organizations to come out with their opinion after reviewing all of the data that was released by the Navy. And so for some of the videos such as the Tic Tac and others, they gave an in-depth review and analysis that has been rebutted by skeptics and defended by SCU scientists. So let's consider that they're also somebody that is defending the UAP topic, that it's still unknown, and that it wasn't just the angle and the way that they were moving, that it wasn't just moving at 30 miles an hour, it was moving at 3,000 miles an hour. It was still their math. And so they're still pushing the UFO topic with their math. They have unidentifiable objects in their reviews. So any group, an organization that's willing to be open about them not having an answer or a full understanding of how this object did some of those things, I think is wonderful. and it's a bold place to be. So I encourage that, and I was quite happy to see support for any organization on this topic, to be honest.
Well, the big thing for me is, when I look at, all of a sudden we see Lou Elizondo pieces starting to come out a little bit more frequent. We see Chris Mellon, kind of, I don't want to say changing direction, but we see him, instead of being the government lobbyist that he has been great at through this, we see him coming back to the scientific side of everything. Much like what is weird about this is what the To the Stars Academy was supposed to be. Okay. The scientific, gurus of this phenomena. And we see him kind of coming backwards. What I don't understand about Chris Mellon is, what is his direction? What is he wanting to accomplish? Is it because the politicians have taken off with this topic that he can go no further because he's already accomplished that mission? And now he wants to come backwards a little bit and pat on the back the scientists who are doing a lot of studying and theorizing behind the scenes with like groups like the SCU? Okay. Or maybe, and I'm just going to throw this out there, I could be completely wrong, but we do know that there are certain people involved in higher ufology that are not fans of the Enigma labs that seems to be wanting to take over ufology. And maybe this is Chris Mellon stepping back and saying, hey guys, you're doing a great job. Keep up the work you're doing, because your work is going to be essential to moving this ball forward so it doesn't fall into the hands of one lonely company. What do you think about that theory?
Absolutely. I think so. Absolutely. You may be onto something with that. And the further we throw this information around, the better at this point. It's kind of like the same reason that, David Grush came out at the time that he did. It was because now was the time. There was no choice. It was either that or potentially put himself or his family in danger, or have the story broken in the wrong way or out of their control, right? It's very important to notice that timing is important, and to getting this out there, I think, as far as it can reach. And mass media is catching up. It really is. It just doesn't want to admit it, in my opinion.
Right. And that's where we're at, dude. That is exactly where we are at when it comes to this subject. And once again, I don't think Chris Mellon has any, bones to pick with a lot of people. I don't think that he has, a lot of agendas that he has to push much more. Okay. But I do think that there could be working towards maybe making sure that this study stays multi-grouped rather than everybody falling under one blanket of the Enigma labs. That's what I think it is.
Interesting. And you could be right. I think timing is so important. And I was wondering if you felt like the timing with the Canadian push and the threat narrative are sometimes blending, and maybe they're easing off on that threat narrative the same way Canada did.
Maybe we shall see. Tim Senor, the UFO Report, continues on Spaced Out Radio right after this. When we return, how about some alien stories? Been a while since we had some goodies from the tinfoil hat bag. We got it next on the UFO Report on Spaced Out Radio. Stay tuned. Rock and roll, buddy.
Rock and roll.
Mm-hmm. I'm hungry.
Oh, you don't even want to know what we had tonight.
Oh, tell me tacos. Stu Gerson. How you doing, Stu Gerson? Hi, friend of Squirrel. Kira, what are you still doing awake? You're usually in bed after hour number 1, and here you are, or pardon me, hour 2, and here you are, a half hour late for bedtime. Have you got your pajamas on yet?
There's probably fireworks going off.
Probably.
Yeah, buddy. It's my birthday week, the 6th of July.
Oh, yeah? Born on the 6th of July? Isn't
Born
that a
on
movie?
the 6th. It is. It's my life movie. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Still being filmed. Yeah, dude.
Asteroid,
July 6th, 19.
Are you a 69 or a 70?
1970.
Yeah, you got 3 years on me, you old fucker.
Great year. A product of the summer of love.
Yep. Summer of rockets, too.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I notice Kira's ignoring me right now about the whole thing.
She's going to throw some Z's.
Oh, here it is. Cardio Pilates earlier and still jazzed up. Yeah, Kira likes a good jazzercising. Bill H., how you doing?
Of course. I could see that. That's
Yeah,
too Kira.
Kira, you may be older than both Tim and I, but you're still better looking.
So much better looking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Please.
If you've never seen Kira, honestly, and this isn't hitting on her or anything, Kira is, when you put together her looks, her personality, her
health.
Everything, her health, she is a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, she rocks.
10 out of 10.
Mark's a lucky dude. Yeah.
Her husband, Mark, is a 10 out of 10, too. They are just a gorgeous, amazing couple.
She doesn't jazzercise, Dave. Only cardio.
Yeah. Cardio stuff.
K.A. cardio.
Sam, the Starseed, how you doing? Welcome to SOR Chat. Glad you joined in on the chat room. Yeah, Kira and her hubby Mark are just two of the most amazing people you could ever meet in your lifetime. Seriously. Yeah.
No.
No. I am still pumped up
Yeah.
about Darren there. I really am.
Yeah, he's super informative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Extremely informative.
And that was his first time on the show?
Yeah. You know what? It happened like 8-9 days ago. I was scrolling through Facebook and his name came up. I'm like, why haven't I had Darren on the show yet? You know, and I messaged him, and within 3 minutes he got back to me. He's like, let's do this, man. I've been hoping for this. Let's do this. And I'm like, hell yeah, let's do this.
8 days he got booked in. It took me like a month and a half to get scheduled.
Well,
unbelievable. Level of importance.
Yeah. You know how it goes.
I do.
Mm-hmm.
It goes by facial and head hair amount, obviously.
Apparently. That's all I care about.
Yeah. Are you due for a haircut? What's going on up there?
Just had a haircut.
Looking tall, buddy. Looking tall.
Oh, yeah. I gotta
adds like 6 inches to you.
I gotta go for a massage tomorrow, and then chiropractor Wednesday, and then massage again Thursday, trying to work these idiot knots out of my back.
You schedule your life out between massages and tacos.
Dude.
I
would totally change a massage. I honestly don't know if I would forego a massage appointment for a taco, but it would be damn close. Now, if I could figure out how to eat a taco while getting a massage, that's the ultimate. Thank you, Wham Bam Ham, CS, Jeff, Enki, Deb, Pam H, Kira, and Beth for the super chats. Love the support everyone. Here we go. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio. Make that the final half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Where am I going? I'm still pumped up from earlier talking UFOs all night long. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate you tuning us in for the UFO Report with little Timmy Senor. Reminder to all of you, if you have missed most of this show or others, shame on you, first off. But second of all, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/spaced out radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. Guess what, Tim? We got a plethora of features for you. A plethora. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our great swag. Follow us on all social media platforms. And yeah, you hear, Tim, we'll bring you back here. You hear that I think it's Thursday that Twitter is going to have some competition with the new Meta platform.
Oh.
So now we got to sign up for that thing too.
What?
Oh,
so many platforms.
I'm so sick of all these social media platforms. I can't keep up. One person, man. One person can't keep up.
Got a party in the metaverse, Dave. And soon we're going to be doing it in a 3D metaverse where we're all just chilling on couches. I can look to my left. There's Dave. I can cheers you a cocktail and pass it off to one of our chat members. It'll happen. You'll see.
Yeah, that's called 1984 by George Orwell. That's called.
True. It's also
you have some great experiential stories for us. We haven't done this in a while. So we're going back in time here. What do you got for us, my man?
1960. 10 years before my birthday. Let's just go there. 1962 in particular, there was several odd reports of alien encounters in quick succession, from out of the country of Argentina in South America. Long hotbed of UFO activity. But back on May 26th of 1962, a woman in the sparsely populated rural province of La Pampa claimed to have seen large, strange, bright disk land and out of which lumbered a hulking, robot-like apparition. And the robot apparently seemed to be collecting samples of soil, and when it realized it was being watched, it apparently stared at the woman with an inscrutable gaze for some time before engaging into its craft and shooting off into the sky. The woman's surprised husband apparently witnessed the disc depart as well, and the woman supposedly so traumatized by the incident that she was taken to a mental institution for treatment. So that's pretty heavy, obviously heavily impactful. And then in July of that same year, a 17-year-old youth by the name of Ricardo was riding his motorcycle along a lonely rural dirt road at night in the vicinity of Parana, Argentina, when out of the gloom, a strange-looking figure appeared in the glow of his headlight. Ricardo was startled and tried to swerve and ride away, but apparently his motorcycle would not obey him, instead being drawn towards the mysterious stranger. The vehicle stopped right in front of the enigmatic being, which the witness could now see stood over 6 feet tall and had a head in the shape of a melon, with 3 eyes. This bizarre entity reportedly tried to grab Ricardo before ambling off in a robotic manner that was scarcely human and towards a bright white light in the distance, leaving deep tracks in its wake. The following month, there was another strange encounter from the same area when on the 21st, a medical doctor saw a disc with a halo in the sky as he was driving towards the city of Parana with his wife. And right after that, he saw this UFO. He noticed two beings over 6 feet tall, with light hair and huge eyes, which were carrying luminous objects in their foreheads, which they made signals for the car and made signals for it to halt. The doctor did not halt, instead tearing off into the night into a panic. And most people in the right minds would probably do the same thing. So in that time, in that part of the world, there were so many reports. And in fact, there's even more stories in this report that I can bring. But doesn't it seem interesting that there still lingers so many great stories of up close encounters that kind of seem similar to maybe somebody that we have heard from that spoke about his encounter? Let's see if I can bring it up here. Calvin Parker. Some of this sounds a little bit like what he described, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
And Calvin Parker recently revealed what the aliens told him when he was abducted, which is incredible to know because I didn't realize that the story went that deep. And according to Parker's recollection, he states that after he and his friend Charles Hickson were initially abducted by the UFO, they found themselves inside a brightly lit room aboard the craft. Now, Parker claimed that he was overwhelmed with fear initially and thought he might die. However, he mentioned that the fear subsided after a while and he became more conscious of his surroundings. Parker described the beings that he encountered as humanoid in shape, but with distinct differences. And he claimed that they had gray, wrinkled skin, slits for mouths, and lacked any noticeable eyes. Now, these beings communicated with him telepathically, and although they didn't use words, Parker understood their message. And in this new account coming from Parker, the aliens conveyed a message of peace and nonviolence. They allegedly told him that they had been observing Earth and its inhabitants for a long time, and they were concerned about humanity's destructive nature and its potential impact on the universe. Now, these beings purportedly emphasize the importance of love, compassion, and understanding among humans, suggesting that these qualities could lead to a better future. So Parker also claimed that the ET entities provided him with insights into advanced technology and knowledge far beyond human understanding. And he mentions that they showed him images of different celestial bodies and explained concepts such as interstellar travel and energy manipulation. However, the scientifics of these revelations and specifics were not extensively detailed in his public statements. So a lot of his informed theories included some of his own opinion on what they may have meant on some of the bigger topics that our globe is going through currently. But it's really interesting that some of the robotic descriptions and some of the lumbering effects that these creatures seem to show may be the same things that they were seeing back in the 60s and just revisiting, and again in the 70s with Calvin's experience, and then who knows, even now. But really interesting. And I've got some more too, but let's just jump in with maybe your opinion of these robotic lumbering creatures that have been making themselves known to us.
This isn't the first time we've heard about robotic type creatures coming from the States. There's a famous case out of the Appalachia that happened there as well that Stanton Friedman looked into. I believe in the 1960s this happened, where a robotic case or robotic type creature with bright red eyes was coming through. Almost looked like a metallic Mothman without wings. And it had a robe and a cape on it, and it was, I wish I could remember the name off the top of my head. Flatwoods Monster. That's what it is.
The town celebrates that to this day, don't they?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, the idea that we're hearing about these robotic type of aliens that are out there, it's not the first time, won't be the last. Right? I mean, the weird part about it, Tim, is when people who are just looking into this, or you watch the documentaries, you usually never see any other alien type species than the grays. It's always about the grays: big grays, little grays, skinny grays, fat grays, wrinkly grays, okay, old grays, new grays. It's all about the grays. But there are a number of other of species out there, my man, that people are coming in contact with that don't get enough press. Yes, you hear about the reptilians. Okay, I've never seen a reptilian. I think I would be scared at that point. Okay. Yes, you hear about the mantid beings. I've never seen one of them. Not sure if I want to see one of them. You hear of these humanoid beings, okay, that people have encounters with, the Nordics or the Pleiadians or whoever it may be. And here they are, looking like the most beautiful tall blondes that you've ever seen. And we don't know what else is out there.
Yeah.
Are there ones that look like ants? Are there ones that look like crayfish? Are there ones that are running around with horse heads? We really, and I make fun of this a little bit because, we have to have a sense of humor with it. But at certain times, we have to make sure that there is more out there that people are experiencing. I mean, there's the famous story of the robotic grandma, that took the alleged grandchild camping, and for some reason was wanting the child to defecate on this newspaper, right? But then real grandma was right around the corner, and robotic grandma was acting weird. I mean, you hear these stories, you don't know how true they are, because once again, it's anecdotal stories. There, I'm sounding like the damn skeptics right now. Okay? But we hear these stories about these robot-like creatures, and it kind of makes me wonder, okay, are they technically biological? Are they able to free think on their own, much like a Terminator? Right? Who knows?
Yeah.
But just because it sounds weird doesn't mean it's false. Because that person, like Calvin Parker, is very real.
It's a good point. And who knew that Seth Green with Robot Chicken could have been right on with what's coming around? And the fact is that I actually interviewed a witness for a show I did this year. And this witness had what looked like a big CO2 tank with eyes beam into his room, and both of his wives saw it. Its eyes got big when it saw and made eye contact with him. It seemed to react and scuttle around the corner and then run through the wall. And both he and his wife saw that. How do you collate something like that? You can actually get the full story on my YouTube channel. I have a segment of it because it's so bizarre, but to know the guy and you get to know him briefly, he's no nonsense. So this was the one unexplainable thing that's ever happened. A random robotic being portaled into his home, scurried around a corner, and then ran through a wall. Like, so many questions there. Why go around a corner? What was that whole thing? Like, and all these were in his head. He's like, I have no answers. It's just what happened. And he even said that the eyes were animated, like eyes on a CO2 tank with like arms and legs.
Very
weird. What do you do with that?
Very weird.
So
I don't know. I don't know what you do with that. The weirdest one that I saw, okay, was that thing in the forest with Samantha Mowat, who I'm so excited for you to get to meet in a couple of weeks. And, that tall, big-headed, bulbous-headed thing, I've never seen a drawing like it. I've never seen a an animated picture of something like that. I don't know what it was. Okay. But I can tell you that I'd love to see it again, man. I would love to see it again. And the weird part about it is I don't know if I will. I don't even know if other people have seen what I've seen. Or what Samantha, I shouldn't say me, what Samantha and I saw that day. What was it? What's it all about?
Yeah. Yeah, especially when the beings can choose who can see them. Supposedly, some people could stand right next to each other and only one sees it. I've experienced that with an investigator where I was filming something and I was able to capture it on screen, but he wasn't able to see it with his naked eye, but he could see it on my screen. These things are just mind-boggling.
Jenny in the chat room wants to know if you're ready to meet Samantha Mowat.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm mentally prepared for this journey. I am completely open-minded and ready. Yeah, I'm depending on her as our guide, so yes, I'm I'm excited to meet her.
Well, you know what the weird part about it is, Tim, is she is so good when it comes to reading people. By the end of the weekend, she'll be finishing your sentences.
That's cool. I look forward to that. That's going to be interesting. She's that intuitive. That's fantastic.
She is that intuitive and that amazing. And I'm very curious to see what she's going to get out at our filming locations.
Yeah, buddy.
Oh, dude, it's going to be amazing. But getting back on topic with
third and final story.
Let's get to it.
The Italian researcher
4 minutes, by the way.
Yeah, so the Italian researcher has shared evidence files of the world's first UFO crash, corroborating the story that we heard from David Grush. So the top U.S. intelligence officer claims that World War II American forces retrieved a UFO that crashed in Italy in 1933. And Italian researchers say they have the documents to prove it. Former top National Reconnaissance Office staffer David Grush shocked the world last month and revealed that he had blown the whistle in sworn testimony to Congress and government watchdogs about the alleged secret U.S. program that has obtained multiple non-human flying saucers. And so now Grush claims that one of these alien spacecraft crashed in northern Italy in 1933 and was secreted away by fascist dictator Benito Mussolini before it was captured by American forces at the end of World War II and shipped to the U.S. So Grush was briefed on the supposed June 1933 crash by staffers who allegedly worked on the non-human craft in the secret U.S. government program. And this week, Senate Intelligence Committee ranking member Marco Rubio confirmed he has heard testimony from alleged first-hand witnesses of such crash retrieval programs. Now, in an interview going on currently with dailymail.com to coincide with Sunday's World UFO Day, Italian researcher Roberto Pinotti has shared extraordinary details of the alleged saucer crash that occurred a full 14 years before the famous Roswell crash. And so this study in this alleged saucer crash has left many skeptics out there. However, there are plenty of secret and original documents now being made public about the case. So at the time they were considered secret, but now they are public. And all of the original documents are now being made available and can be viewed at dailymail.com and some other websites that we will put in our link below. So the documents were mysteriously mailed to Pinotti from an anonymous source who claimed to have inherited them from a family member who worked on Mussolini's supposed UFO program.
That just blows my mind.
Corroboration.
How many more stories are we going to see come out from that era?
Yeah.
Does this put a lot, I've always tried to stay away from the German side of everything because, you know, that nasty N word that goes along with it that people are throwing around like it's a cupcake today. I don't like using that term, but I will say this: it makes you think about the Vril, which were a bunch of German psychic type intuitives who were apparently amazingly connected to extraterrestrials and all sorts of high strangeness. Makes you wonder how much of that is real.
Oh,
How
yeah.
much,
I mean, it's all probably sourced in real, but what was happening, was that real? Was what they were sourcing real? Or were they just desperately trying to appease the situation, and survive, if you will? So you just got to wonder, but something came from it, obviously, and some interesting concepts. And if something was recovered, well, here are the documents to support it. And I think that that's what we've been waiting for, is some evidence. And now this researcher has brought them forward, and that massively supports Grush's case. And so I think we're going to see some more of the cards falling in front of us here when people are questioning whether or not this is the reality that we're looking at. Do we have crashed vehicles? Well, here's one at least. So where is it? That's next.
That's why you bring the goods each and every night here that you were on, my friend, on Spaced Out Radio, Little Timmy Senor, and the UFO Report. If you've missed other UFO reports, just go to our YouTube channel. They're all lined up right there for you, and you can see Tim's beautiful smile on the thumbnails, getting ready for the show. He does have a beautiful smile. What can we say? Tim, thank you so much for another great report. Thank you to Darren King, the ExoAcademian, for a great show on UFOs tonight. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at work, at home, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAP, Facebook, Spreaker, LinkedIn, the Space Travelers Club, and on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends, we're watching. We own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we got room for them too. Good night. All right, we're clear, buddy. By the way, it's that time of the night where we should say hello to all the agents and agencies out there checking us on out tonight. Thank you so much for tuning us in. And give us a call sometime. You already have the phone numbers, so we don't need to provide them for you. And remember, some of us can be bought. Thank you for the
This
National
guy.
Security Agency.
So I am bearing treats tonight. I'm sticking around just long enough to bring you the top 10 American UFO incidents.
Top 10.
I got them. I got the top 10.
All right.
Should we do it? Are you ready?
Start with number one.
Of course. Let's see, Dave, let's make this a little bit of a game. Okay, and chat, you can get involved too. I'll read chat tonight. So, what do you guys think is the number one top American UFO incident?
Roswell. Has to be Roswell.
D's saying Roswell. Well, let's see. Oh, yep. Gnome Squatch jumps right in. Roswell. Trent. Kira's going Trent. Okay. Well, I'm seeing some. 1941 Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Good. Phoenix Lights. Roswell coming in from Love V. Mysterion says the lights. Oh, O'Hare Airport. Chris Topaz. Good one. Dulce from Monica. Interesting choice. Kenneth Arnold sighting. The first. Kira, good one. Roswell. Fast Eddie. Socorro, you guys are, whoever said Roswell, Dave, you guys got it right. Roswell incident of 1947. And recently, they're down there at the Roswell event, kicking up a storm. They're scouring the first crash site, or is it the second crash site? Are you familiar with what's going on right now down there?
No, I'm not paying attention.
Okay. So there are some researchers that shall remain nameless doing a great job, and actually went on News Nation and reported from the Roswell crash site. They are scouring for more evidence, and they're digging deep. They've got tech out there looking. Hopefully those guys recover something, because it'll all be public eyes on it. Number 2, I didn't expect this one, but it makes sense. And if we need hints, I'm going to drop hints. Number 2, what do you think the number 2 top 10 American UFO incidents? So far, no one said it in the chat yet.
I'm going to say the Kenneth Arnold incident.
Kenneth Arnold is a good one. That is a good one. What do you guys think? Are you going to side with Dave on Kenneth Arnold? Or I'll just say no one has guessed it yet in chat. So it would have to be, I saw Battle of LA. That was the last one. Nope, it's not that. I will tell you, it's not the Battle of LA. But boy, are you kind of close in some way. Think what we got going on here. Okay, number 2 is the Washington, D.C. sightings.
Right.
Remember how big of a deal that was? That was a big deal back then. Okay. All right, number 3. Oh, I see some people are already guessing number 3. Number 3 is what I see a couple of people saying in the chat. So number 3, Dave, what do you think number 3 is?
Kecksburg?
Think of a famous couple. It's a famous couple.
Betty and Barney Hill.
Betty and Barney Hill abduction of 1961. Driving through New Hampshire, and their story became one of the first widely publicized cases of alien abduction. Number 4, he's a swell guy. He's still talking at events.
Travis Walton.
Number 4, Travis Walton abduction of 1975, and his alleged abduction occurred in Arizona's Apache Seat Graves National Forest. Walton's disappearance and subsequent return made headlines, and his account was later adapted into the movie Fire in the Sky. Number 5 is my personal favorite, Dave, and the audience has guessed it. It's out there, but what do you guys think number 5 is? Drop it in there starting right now after I saw Fire in the Sky from Deb from SAC.
You seem like a Pascagoula kind of guy.
Oh, I do love that case, but no, it is not that. It's bigger, in my opinion. That's kind
Phoenix
of a hint.
Lights.
That's it. Oh, Dave, you nailed it. Phoenix Lights. That's a big one. 1997. The Phoenix Lights were a series of widely observed UFO sightings over Phoenix, Arizona. Thousands of witnesses reported seeing a V-shaped object with lights flying silently over the sky. Not just lights. Everyone says lights because it's the name, but there was an object spotted.
Oh, yeah. And let's not forget that was actually seen in dusk as well. Like people saw the full craft, two of them, I believe, in dusk. Let's give a quick shout out, new listener in our chat room that I haven't seen before. Fast Eddie Flathead, welcome to SOR chat, my man. Appreciate you being here. Hopefully you hit subscribe, ring that bell. We'd appreciate it. Beth Noyes, I sent you a message on Facebook. Oh yes, you just responded. So
that's nice.
Let's see here. Oh, it's one of these type of stories. Oh yeah, Beth, I'm sending you some dates. Oh, I love these stories. This is the type of shit that just gets me. This is why I love this business, is this type of story right here.
Excellent.
Okay. Go ahead. Excellent. Donald Dean, how you doing? Are we on number 5 now?
We are. The Long Island Railroad is screwing up this job. My bad. Sorry about that. So we had number 5 at the Phoenix Lights of 1997. Number 6, and I did see one person say it earlier. What is the 6th in the top 10 American UFO incidents according to ChatGPT? And then I did the research on each, but number 6. What are your thoughts, D? Any guesses before I give you hints?
James Fry, how you doing?
Flatwoods, Battle of LA, Oak Harbor, Maury Island.
My goodness.
LA UFO. Battle of LA. Wow, yeah, that was a good one.
Devil's Den?
Ooh, Devil's Den. That's a good guess. Kecksburg. I'm seeing Gulf Breeze. Roswell was number 1. Christine Lynn. Sorry. Lubbock Lights. Rob. Good guess.
I knew it was in Texas.
No. That was Rob's guess. I haven't said what it is yet. Tic Tac. I'm still reading chat's guesses. I haven't seen it yet, so I was giving them a couple minutes or a minute to maybe throw it in. We could do this all night, you guys, and drink every time you get it wrong. Dulcie.
Gerardo is strong.
That's a strong one. It's not even on here. Okay, no one has guessed it, but someone did guess it earlier. Socorro, rather. Brown Mountain Lights. Oh yeah, I remember hearing about those.
I see how we are living.
McMinnville, Rob. I like it. Believe it or not, it's not even on the list.
Terry Hall's property there.
That's right. That's where our lab is parked right now.
Yeah.
The balloon.
Right, it happened.
Dead fish cheese spread, says the balloon. Oh, he's a comedian, or she. He or she is a comedian. That's beautiful. Okay, I'm just going to shoot it out there. Number 6 is Chicago O'Hare Airport sighting of 2006.
Uh-oh.
Several airport employees and pilots of Chicago O'Hare International Airport reported a metallic saucer-shaped object hovering over a gate. The sighting received media attention, but was not officially explained. Kind of punched a hole in the clouds, too, when it split, right? I
remember seeing that report on the news, that big hole in the cloud.
I remember seeing the cloud. Did anyone photograph the disc, though? That would have been the shot. Number 7 made all the headlines, and most of us will probably remember the headlines.
Is that when the Dudleys put Mae Young through a table?
Huh? Let's think top 10 American UFO incidents that America is aware of. Because table? No, I don't know. It was a biggie. It made headlines. And let's see if your chat can come up with it. Catalina. Oh, I love the way Christine Lynn thinks.
No, I would say the Nimitz incident.
Oh, dude, you're on fire. Yeah, that's it. The 2004 Nimitz encounter involved the USS Nimitz Carrier Strike Group during training exercises off the coast of California. She was saying Catalina in the chat, so technically she was absolutely right.
Give that credit to Christine getting that one.
Yeah, Christine Lynn with the Catalina, great call. That was like right on. I think as I said it, she nailed it. Right in sync with you. Reported encounters of unidentified aerial displaying advanced capabilities. 80,000 feet. Wasn't it down to sea level in under second? Less than a second.
Seconds.
That's insane. I mean, that's not a glitch. That's insane. Number 8. This might be like the most fun, I would have to say. The most fun because there's so many accounts and it's super mysterious and it's an up close and personal account. So what do you think this one might be? Very mysterious, but there was definitely people up close and personal with this one. Maybe even touching it.
Personal. Kecksburg.
Kind of close though. Definitely touching of the craft. Let's see what the chat thinks. Allagash encounter, Battle of LA from Monica. Let's see who else. Eisenhower fake dental. Oh yeah, that alien meeting. That's right. That was an event that could have happened. Tim Mothman's taking credit for Catalina. Let's see. LA. Monica's really sticking with her guns. She's feeling that's a biggie. Oh, Shelby taking some gold.
Rendlesham?
Mm-hmm.
But that didn't happen on American soil.
But it was Americans that so it was the U.S. Air Force personnel reported the encounters. So officially it was a U.S. case. Even though it was often referred to as Britain's Roswell, the Rendlesham Forest incident took place near RAF Woodbridge in Suffolk, England. However, U.S. Air Force personnel reported the encounters with a triangular UFO. And that's what made it a case. So we're swooping that one away from the British and stealing that as one of ours somehow.
That's typical.
Typical
of the Republic. Steal from the Commonwealth.
Yeah, and there are even guys making up stories that didn't even happen to try and steal the story from the story. It's just, what a mess. But what a great and very tactile. If some of the recording that was that lingers as evidence, it just draws you in. You're like, oh man, this happened. Now a few people in the chat had thrown this one out earlier. Number 9. And these are actually going down in level of importance, but at the same rate, I feel like this is a pretty good one. Number 9, what do you think we have here? And I've never really researched this. I'm not familiar with it as much as I should be. Chat, you had said it at one point. I see aerial school incident in Zimbabwe. Well, these have to be U.S. ones, Deb from SAC. Otherwise, I would totally agree with you. Skinwalker. Dead fish cheese spread. I love the way your brain works. All of those crop circle UFO orbs from Fast Eddie. I like that. Let's see, what else have we got here? Trinity from Raw Dog. That guy gets it. But that's not it. That's an Aztec. No, that's not it. It happened in Texas. Cash Landrum incident, 1980. Betty Cash, Vicky Landrum, and Colby Landrum reported encountering a diamond-shaped object emitting intense heat in Texas. They suffered health issues afterwards, leading to speculation about radiation exposure. It's pretty heavy duty. All right, Dave's taking a break. You know what that means, you guys. Kira with her most famous Oregon case. Teehee. Okay. Number 10. And I don't know. Let's see if you guys can guess this. It hasn't come into the chat yet, but I have a personal link with number 10. Happened in 2008. If that's a hint. And let's see what you guys are going to guess. The Mayan calendar, cattle mutilate. I don't know if that's a swamp guess. You guys are just throwing out this. Okay, it would be like a famous event or something. It's a UFO case that has a name. Number 10. Remember, this is the top 10 American UFO incidents. This is a big one. In 2008, Oak Harbor coming in from Dead Fish. By the way, great name, great bands, great choice in a name. Let's see what else we've got. Go Fast video. No, but good guess. Tim's sighting, not famous enough, Rob, but thank you. Mount Rainier. Yeah. That's the first. O'Hare, we did that. Gnome Squatch. O'Hare was number, what was it? 6. O'Hare was number 6. Stevensville, Texas, coming from Paramarv with the gold medal. That's it. Number 10, the Stevensville sightings in 2008. Well done. If you Googled it, shame. If you didn't, well done. Numerous residents of Stevensville, Texas, reported seeing a large silent object with bright lights flying at low altitude. The sightings prompted media coverage and a subsequent UFO investigation. And that UFO investigation was headed by, and I will tell you in detail here shortly. Bam. You guys are rocking tonight. I don't usually hang out, but you know, Dave looked bored. Where am I? Bingo. Huh. Yeah. Here we go. Everything is so slow. It's me. It's not Starlink's fault. Okay, here we go. So Angela Joyner and her husband were the researchers on that. And she was also pivotal to getting out a lot of data to the news at the time. She was kind of one of those early reporters that pushed this topic. She's really interesting to get to know as a researcher. I got to know her pretty well when I started working with one of the witnesses that came out here to Oregon. And so our paths crossed before she passed away in 2021, and her husband as well. But a very interesting case, and her accounts, she was actually a witness to the Stevensville sighting, and it was one of those things that changed her life. You know, the minute that she saw that, the same way I have a connection to the Phoenix Lights, knowing Tom King and how it impacted his life. I mean, he's looking into the skies every single day, all day. Talk about changing somebody's life after having an experience. But the Phoenix Lights, you know, that's a biggie. Number 5, I think, is a fair place on the scale. Of course, for him, it's probably number 1. But Dave, if you were to have a number 1 or top couple, what are your top UFO sightings? And for you, it doesn't have to be American only. It can be anywhere.
I would say Roswell and Phoenix would be in my top 2.
Yeah.
Number 3 would be Shag Harbor.
Yeah.
Number 4 would be Betty and Barney Hill. Number 5 in my life would be the Stefan Mikulik case up here in Canada. That's where he was out looking for rocks. And
what about school children cases? There's,
well, I would take the Zimbabwe aerial case. I'd put that in there.
And then maybe that up close and personal one that James Fox did.
I'm surprised Japan Airlines
wasn't on there
in Alaska.
They had radar hits and everything on that.
That craft was over a mile long.
Yeah. What?
Okay. And
the size of an acorn shape, right? Or something, or walnut?
No, this was like a big, I don't even know what to call it. Japan Airlines is a good one.
And then what about James Fox's recent documentary, that case?
I'd say the Andreasen affair.
Oh, Andreasen. Oh, yeah. Whoa. But that's hardcore.
Yeah.
These are your top ones, though. Yeah, I get it.
Chris Bledsoe.
Deep.
What am I at, 7?
Mm-hmm.
Kecksburg. I'd put on that list.
Yeah. Changed a whole town.
Yeah. Kenneth Arnold. I'd put that on there. Because that's where we got flying saucer.
Mm-hmm.
What would my number 10 be? Probably the Washington, D.C. incident.
Some blobs of light in the sky. Well, they scurried F6 or F whatever they were back then. What were they? Little,
I think F8s.
F8s. They did scurry some planes out to check it out. They must have gotten radar hits and, yeah. What about Battle of LA? It was pretty popular in your chat. I think everyone likes that one.
I like that one too, but the problem is we still don't know what was there. We're only assuming it was a UFO. Do I believe it was a UFO? Probably, but there isn't a lot of information on that one. I wouldn't put that one in my top 10.
Have you seen the recent alien footage that has come out recently? Photographs of what is considered an apparent alien gray coming from a reliable source. And it's actually been uploaded to Enigma Labs website. Analyzing the leaked video took hours and hours, but they believe it's an actual potential leaked video of an alien encounter. They're still considering it potentially clever CGI rendering, but it would be pretty deep if done so. And so, yeah, without giving too much credit to it, it could definitely be an orchestrated hoax. However, if you do consider some of the sources of the footage, you may think twice. Have you seen it recently?
I haven't seen that one yet, no.
Okay, I'll share it with you before we go deeper into it, but pretty cool stuff. I hope at some point we have something we can point to as being credible, just so we can get over this hump, where everyone's screaming for evidence. If everyone could just agree this is a credible video and it's of an ET, I think that would solve a lot of problems. No big deal. I think we're ready for that. Just show us the video.
Right.
Yeah, but beware of fakes.
Bear with me. There we go. Well, have you shared that with me? Where are you sharing it with me?
Oh, I haven't yet. We'll save it for another day. We'll spend some time on it after you've. It's a long story. Before you embark, yeah. I thought maybe you'd already heard about it.
No.
Okay. Well, what's happening is people that have evidence supporting what Grush was talking about are kind of popping out now. And they're like, oh, I guess I have this. I guess I have that. And I can put it out there, now because it's out in the open. So we're finding supporting data here and there. We'll see what's credible and what's not. It still hasn't gone through the rinse process, but we'll see what happens. But, we're finding evidence that suggests even Bob Lazar was telling the truth about UFOs and anti-gravity propulsion. So why not? Who knows what we're going to find next?
Give me 2 seconds here, Tim. Just wrapping all this stuff up.
Mass hysteria says asteroid coming. Love it. Applesauce is yelling Croatian. Mm-hmm. Rendlesham was a trip on voice recording. Raw Dog is so right. It really was. When the nukes got switched off, things did get weird, Raz. Yeah, and to hear his first-hand account, he's a very no-nonsense guy. I believe everything he says. Phil Schneider, I don't personally... that blows my hair back, and I don't even have hair. But Paramarv is bringing up Phil Schneider. Do you have an opinion?
I want Phil Schneider's story to be so true. I do.
Oh, the Mojave incident. I see people saying Virginia, Brazil, and yes, I feel like that's a pretty darn good case. We need the evidence. I feel like we're so close. James Fox needs to just bring it. But the Mojave incident, I think, is cool. What a cool incident. Scary, though, right? What are your thoughts? Have you ever been out in that kind of area?
Out there.
Ooh, man, it's creepy. I've been there, and it is creepy. The turkey UFO coming from Christine. Turkey UFO. Was that the thing that came down and then shot back up?
There's a video of the turkey UFO.
Do you think that's real? It's almost too good.
I want to believe, but the video is pretty shabby.
I want to believe that one too. Well, tell me more about Shag Harbor. Did they retrieve materials from that, or was there supposedly like something shed from it?
Apparently, this thing was seen coming over Ontario, then it came over the Great Lakes, then over Maine, and heading east, and then crashed into Shag Harbor in Nova Scotia. It was witnessed by over 800 people in the area, from civilians to Royal Canadian Mounted Police to the Canadian Armed Forces to the United States Navy. Allegedly, they sent divers into the water to try and figure out what this was. And allegedly, the divers saw another craft looking exactly like it underwater, and these beings fixing the craft. And when they went back the next day at daylight, both craft were gone.
Wow.
Now, that area apparently has really horrible currents. the time of year would have meant that there was no great white sharks in the area. I still think there's debris there. And I don't know how, if the Canadian, what I would like to know is if the Canadian Navy or the United States Navy ever dove in that area to try and see if they got any fragments from it. Because that is one case we've never heard about fragments.
Was this also the case where a fisherman claimed that slag hit his fishing boat?
Could have been.
Okay, because I know that Gary Nolan spoke about working on a sample of slag that supposedly dripped from a UFO. I read a recent report on it, on his results.
No, that was this one.
Okay, it wasn't that one. Okay.
No.
Interesting. The slag phenomenon is also interesting. You got a great chat. I can't tell you how fun it is to interact with them. They're so great and spontaneous.
And on that note, Timmy,
indeed,
call it the night, because
it's been fun.
Gotta grab something to eat here before I go to bed. I'm hungry, and I got some fruit in the fridge waiting for me.
Fruity, yeah. Right on. Thanks for staying up later. It's been fun.
Appreciate it. I like it when you stay up with me. Yeah. Thank you tonight to Jeff, Enki, Deb, Pam H, Kira, Beth, CS, and Mr. Wham Bam Ham. Appreciate the love with the super chats. It's a great way to support what we do. Thank you to all our new subscribers tonight, as we are encroaching on 23,000 subscribers.
Wow.
And let's see here. How many more do we need? We need 80 more. 80. Wow. So that could be within the next week, we should hit that. And so thank you to that. And Tim, thank you to you for everything you do for this show.
Yeah, and that's the UFO news, and I am out of here.
Geraldine Orozco tomorrow night. We'll see you all then, okay? Take care.
Healthy, my friend.
You too.
You need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.